Welcome to your in-depth astrology overview and zodiac forecast for January 2025. I'm going to share with you some standout details to look out for to begin with, then on screen the event chart right at the start of the month. But this has a very powerful dimension because it's also the start of the year, of course. So that event chart will provide a backdrop for the following 12 months. Then I'll go through the evolving influences as the month goes on before sharing in depth each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. Thank you so much for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. And also if you could like or share the video, that would be cool too. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, I'll give you a free gift of your zodiac general, Chinese, Indian and love forecasts. You also get 30% off and your life roadmap report. The life roadmap report helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. A more intimate understanding of them helps you to understand your forecast. But the forecast will give you the exact timings, totally unique to you. No two charts are the same. Please see the link below for more. If your preference is for whole sign, I offer that, but also you can have the solar option if you don't know your time. So as we come into year 2025 and January, wishing you all the best for the new year, we're surfing the energy of the Capricorn new moon, which occurred on the 30th of December. The sign of Capricorn is very much about structures, can be to do with the orthodox, can be to do with the material world. But the moon here is debilitated. So we just need to be aware that as we set our intentions for the new year, or perhaps our New Year's resolutions, the moon can be a little bit practical. So we just need to bear that in mind. But as we come into this new year, there are two mega influences at play. If you recall, on Christmas Eve, Jupiter and Saturn, Jupiter, the greater benefic, and Saturn, the greater malefic, were in a quarrel. They were at 90 degrees. And they're still in touch within 3 degrees of that tension for the first 2 weeks of this new year. So I will need to share more about that with you. We've also got the mighty Mars in Leo, in retrograde, in a direct opposition with Pluto, the planet of power and transformation. That's a very intense aspect. And it is one which can see power used in a bad way. And with all the world tension that's going on, it's a very warlike opposition, to be honest. Power needs to be used wisely, but it is going to create some tension that peaks on the 3rd. But Mars is going to be retracing its steps back into the sign of Cancer, and later in the month is going to forge some very positive links, one to Neptune and one to Uranus, but it is involved in the Cancer full moon of the 13th. And that too can be very volatile. When we put Mars and the moon together, opposite the sun, that can amp up that tension furthermore. But as the month goes on, there is the potential for greater clarity to evolve. The process really begins with the sun's arrival in Aquarius on the 19th. It connects through the presidential inauguration with Pluto. It becomes exact on the 21st. But we're also going to have Mercury switching into the sign of Aquarius, and that occurs on the 28th. And then we have an Aquarius new moon on the 29th. The sign of Aquarius is about the collective, but it's also about the importance of everyone within the collective as an individual. And I feel because this new moon is embracing the energy of Pluto, but also Mercury. It could be argued to be one of the most important new moons for a very long time, because the sign of Aquarius can be futuristic, but it also can keep one foot in the past. There's a duality to the sign of Aquarius, and that creates a tension. Uranus seeks change and Saturn seeks continuity. But it can be a bridge between the Plutonian energies that we've had, particularly when Saturn and Pluto came into conjunction in 219, started 220. That was a very turbulent time. So we're making a transition into this new way of thinking, and that's really underlined when Uranus, the modern ruler of Aquarius, goes direct after a 5-month retrograde on the very last day of January. So this can be a month that's hugely intense, powerful, turbulent even at the start, but there is the potential for some healing towards the end of the month. And I'm going to go through this in detail with you. But next, on screen, I'm showing the event chart. Now, as ever, we always look at the two luminaries, the moon and the sun. The sun lights up the day, the moon lights up the night, sometimes with the full moon. And you can see that the moon at 23 degrees is separating, but it is forging a very strong link with Uranus. And Uranus, despite being a disruptor in the sign of Taurus, where it's in its fall, and since those 5 months in 218, the seed-in time, when it's squared off with Mars, and is part of the volatility that's gone on since then, in terms of agriculture, the cost of fuel, the manufacture or extraction of resources, the geopolitical energy that's gone on a lot about the grabbing of land. Well, all of that has been because Uranus likes to provoke, it likes to change, but the sign of Taurus likes continuity, and of course it is about money. And we all know that at the bottom of a lot of the things that go on is money. So Uranus has created that volatility, but it starts this year in a link with the moon, suggesting we can try and stick with what we know and what we're familiar with, but that actually may create tensions. So we need to flex and bend and be open to the new way forwards. And talking of the new way forwards, you can see that the North Node, the nodal axis, is going to invert on the 11th of January, the true nodal axis, into the sign of Pisces, north, and Virgo, south, for the first time in 17 years. It's a big deal. But coming to the end of its journey, as it goes backward through the sign of Aries, you can see it starts this year in a fabulous sextile to Pluto and a wonderful angle to Mars. So we have a passionate fire angle there. If we use the energy of Mars and Pluto in the right kind of way, then we are seeing an option with the North Node, the point of destiny, about where it can take us. But I feel essentially once it moves into Pisces on the 11th of January, it's telling us that we've got a lot of healing to do, a lot of soothing to do, a lot of owning about what drives some of our power plays. But you can see Mars and Pluto are diametrically opposite. Now, Mars in Leo can be very egotistical, but it's also great if you're someone who wants to showcase your talents, you know, whether you're interested in amateur dramatics, whether you're a professional actor, whether you're someone who's a musician, a comedian, or someone who has a public-facing role. Mars is very charismatic, but it is in retrograde and it is opposite Pluto. So Mars is about I and Pluto is about we, and there's going to be a tension. Who's going to get the upper hand? Because Venus, the planet of relating, but also money, in the sign of Aquarius at the start of this year, you can see is clashing with Uranus. So we're going to see quite starkly where people's values don't align, where some people don't get the big picture. It's just about what they want straight away. And that can be the Pluto-Mars opposition. It can be very grasping, but it can use power and force and coercion in order to dominate and get what it wants. So it has to be stood up to, and we can't appease bullies. But you can also see that Jupiter, the planet of growth and optimism, in its retrograde through to early February, is also in that square to Saturn that I mentioned. So for the first 2 weeks of this year, so that provides a backdrop for the whole of the year. So Saturn in Pisces is asking us to work at how we feel, and Jupiter in Gemini suggests there's going to be lots of ideas traded, lots of clips of people's opinions, but Jupiter's detrimented in Gemini. It's also opposite Mercury, detrimented in Sagittarius. So it could be said that Saturn's in a T-square to them both. So what we're going to find is as the nodal axis retreats and goes through the sign of Pisces and meets with the advancing Saturn around about the 17th of April, that's going to be a hugely significant date in the whole astrological diary, because we're really going to see the outcome, the karma of where things have been heading. Because Saturn is in a way going to hold us to account, particularly in the sign of Pisces. And it is about emotion, but it also can be about the overall culmination of the last 28 and a half years. Saturn takes 29 and a half years. It will move fully. It's going to go into Aries, of course, this year. On the 26th of May through to the end of August, but it will move more fully into Aries for the longer term from the middle of February 26. But mark that in your diary, the 17th of April, it's going to be a big deal. But this map, this chart at the start of the year, suggests that there is the potential to be progressive of how we think about property, how we think about ownership, but also there's going to be a lot of conversation, but I feel there's going to be a lot of inflammatory language used, but it will have consequences, because that opposition between Pluto and Mars is so very edgy. So that takes us right to the start of the month. So on the 3rd, Venus moves into a sign she loves to be in, and that is Pisces. Venus here is exalted. But it's also because it's the sign of culmination where we may feel very nostalgic for someone from our past. If you had time to think over the festive period, or perhaps miss someone who's no longer with you, that rawness could reach a peak around the 19th when they come into conjunction, Venus and Saturn. But week 3 could also be a time when the reality of a relationship which is not working so well may need to be grappled with. But Venus does love being there for sure. But also on the 3rd, we have Mercury ending its post-retrograde shadow. But Mercury still starts this year in its detriment. If you recall, at the start of 24, it was in retrograde, and it was conjunct Mars, and it was square Neptune. And I did say then we would see clandestine sabotage, and particularly to the transport and communicational systems. And we did see that in the latter part of 2024, unfortunately. But if there have been some tangles, perhaps you've been waiting to hear about a university course or some travel compensation, you should get a piece of good news at that time. But it doesn't change the fact that Mercury and Neptune are broadly still in a square right at the start of this year, suggesting we still need to be very precise in the way that we convey information, but also if we're working through any paperwork or a contract, we also need to be very careful too. But then on the 3rd, that exact opposition between Mars and Pluto across Leo and Aquarius. And Mars in Leo can be very prideful, but Pluto in Aquarius is going to hold that pride to account. We're going to have a repetition of this aspect around about the 27th of April, because Mars will go back into Leo on the 18th of April, and that's when we're going to see that again. We also saw Mars opposite Pluto on November the 3rd, and that saw a lot of ramping up of the tension, certainly on the world stage. But on the 6th, Mars makes its way back into the sign of Cancer, which of course is very much about feeling, home, protectiveness, and it's going to continue its retrograde through to the 24th of February, and then, as I mentioned before, we'll return back into the glorious Leo, because Mars does love being in Leo, on the 18th of April through to the 17th of June. So we're going to get another 9 weeks of Mars in Leo where we can showcase our talents, but that opposition with Pluto does require care in our own personal situations, but you will see it play out on the world stage. So we're going to see a lot of strutting and posturing, and while you do this and I'll do that, and it's going to be very, very tense indeed. But on the 8th, Mercury dives into the sign of Capricorn. This is really interesting. It's a very business-like place for Mercury to be. I don't know if you knew this, but Mercury in a way stands for marketing or merchant, Mercury. And of course it is the linker between the higher world, the lower world, so it's the messenger. And in the sign of Capricorn, it's saying, look, we need to be business-like. We also need to perhaps cool things down a bit with some stability and some wise heads. Some experienced voices could come in to make a contribution. But on the 11th, in some ways, perhaps the most important date of the whole year, insofar as the nodal axis and its reversal back into Pisces north, point of destiny, and Virgo south. Now I feel it's an opportunity for us all through this year, because Saturn and Neptune may be going into Aries, Saturn for just over 3 months, Neptune for just over or just under 8, but essentially Saturn and Neptune are going to apply to all the eclipses that occur in Pisces and Virgo this year, and that is going to ask some real questions about our mental, emotional and psychological well-being, but also how we live our lives in a more practical, fundamental way in terms of how much exercise we get, what sort of food we eat, how aware we are of the quality of the nutrition we do consume, and getting a nice balance between those two polarities is going to be the challenge. But the 13th is another highly charged moment of this month, because then we have the Cancer full moon. Now, of course, the moon rules Cancer, so on the face of it should be at home here, but it's facing another cardinal sign where the moon doesn't feel that comfortable, of course, in Capricorn, where it's detrimented. So the physical world, money, competes with what we need in terms of home, family and emotional nurture and enrichment. But because Mars is applying to the full moon exactly, I think there could be volatility, and it may be around the property market. It's not all bad, because Uranus actually forges a very positive sextile to that moon position, and of course Uranus can be progressive. Even if planets are in detriment, are in retrograde, they still have a gift for us if we choose to quarry it out. But I thought that something over the next couple of weeks could be quite rocky. But we are going to find when the Sun moves into Aquarius on the 19th, that does start to promote a conversation, or a greater conversation, because the emotion of Cancer is competing with the cold detachment of Capricorn because of the ruler Saturn. But along comes the Sun into Aquarius, where Saturn's still a key feature, key player, because it's the co-regent, but we get a chance to perhaps talk things through, perhaps realise that other people may see things differently, that there is a collective that's affected by individual actions, Mars in Leo. And with the Sun's application to Pluto exactly on the 21st, which is just after the inauguration, what a time for person-kind. You know, it's a very, very powerful moment. But also in week 3 we do have Venus and Saturn combining, and you know, if there is a relationship that hasn't been working particularly well, it's gonna need to be worked at, or it could end. So if there is a weak relationship, it doesn't have to be a romance, so it could be with a colleague, a friend, a neighbour, a family member. Things can get very tough in week 3 with that aspect. But then The last 2 weeks do see, as Mars goes forward, it forge a really sparkling alliance to Uranus, which comes from initially that full moon. And of course, Uranus is about trying things in a different way. And Mars in Cancer can be about where we live or our emotional world. But perhaps if we can all use the groundbreaking energy that Mars and Uranus can give us to perhaps get a little bit more at peace with the whole concept of vulnerability, of emotion, of what we need. There could be some interesting revelations around that time. And then at the end of this month, Mars moves into a trine with Neptune. Again, the Mars warlike player at the start of this month in that opposition with Pluto is being cooled down by the healer, Neptune. So compassion, letting go, releasing old pain, accepting we don't get everything our own way, very Mars Leo. It is a bit of give and take. It's about keeping the stability. So although Mars can create some instability on that full moon, there is potential for healing too. Then on the 28th, Mercury moves into Aquarius. It's a sign where this planet is exalted, it rises. And of course, Aquarius can be very modern, as well as holding on to the good parts of the tradition. But then the new moon, which occurs in Aquarius on the 29th, can be a celebration of the best of us all. We could see some accords, we could see some greater clarity come through. But of course, when we put Pluto and Mercury together like we have in this new moon, we can also see dogma, because Pluto can be forcing the message, and of course Mercury is the messenger. And because Aquarius energy can be quite detached, cool, distant, rather dystopian in a way, you know, the whole thing with AI, robotics, automation, there's going to be a lot of conversation around that at the end of this month. But in terms of how we all communicate, you know, we are seeing some shifts, aren't we? A certain well-used microblogging site has in some ways been supplanted by a new microblogging site, and that offers hope for a fairer and perhaps a little bit of a kinder way of sharing information. We've also seen some big antitrust cases against some of the massive tech players, which governments are saying have held too much power, have held monopolies. Very, very interesting. Also, what's going to happen to that very popular site that many of us like watching funny stuff on, that certain people within the American jurisdiction have got concerns about. What's going to happen with that? So there could be some big stuff around these big platforms, but big stuff about how we think about how we share information, how we connect to each other, particularly with Uranus going direct as the month comes to a close. You couldn't make it up, really, the significance of all this Aquarius energy at the end of this month as a counterpoint to the fierce, impatient, prideful, perhaps even boastful energy of Mars in Leo right at the start of the month. But Mars tracking backwards into Cancer is reminding us of the need for feelings, to protect those feelings, to take a safety first attitude. Will people take a safety first attitude to people who have the true power? We will see. But please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. But underneath this video, you can click on your year 2025 Zodiac Forecast Deep Dive. Welcome Aries to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to provide some standout details particularly relevant to you to begin with. Please stay with me. Then on screen I'll share the event chart right at the start of the month and the year. That provides some important information to guide us. Then, as influences feed in, I'll go through each of those frame by frame to explore them and give you a clear understanding of what January 2025 holds for you. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. So Aries, the big takeouts for you for January concerns your ruler Mars. Mars is retrograde as you come into this new year. It's also in a face-off with the power planet Pluto. That peaks on the 3rd. That's a big deal. I need to unpack that for you. But on the 6th, Mars inverts from Leo back into the feline sign of Cancer. It's going to be there through to the 18th of April, but it is also going to continue its retrograde all through this month. I will share about that as well. But on the 13th, the full moon sees Mars in the picture, and that can create a certain volatility on that particular full moon. Yet as the month goes on, Mars actually forges two very positive links to both Uranus and Neptune. I'll unpack those for you as well. But by the end of the month and the Aquarius new moon of the 29th, a much more social and future-orientated influence starts to develop in your situation. Now, on the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we need to be mindful of the two luminaries. And on the 30th of December, there was a new moon in the sign of Capricorn. So you can see the moon is separating from that new moon, and at 23 degrees forges a perfect link with Uranus, suggesting when it comes to setting your intentions for the new year around work, you perhaps do need to be open-minded. There could also be some changes around your financial situation that you choose, and the reason for that is Venus. Venus is in the part of your chart to do with plotting your long-term future, the sign of Aquarius, but it's also about your associations. If there are certain people that you're working with, networking with, that don't quite match who you want to be, you may want to break free of those because of Venus's square to Uranus. So that need to stay very open-minded that the moon and Uranus emphasize is something to hold dear. But Saturn, the planet of limitation but also of harsh lessons, does still reside at the start of this year in your 12th house. It's going to be there through to the 26th of May. It will move for 3 months and 7 days through to the end of August into your sign, which can be like a new epoch, or certainly the start of one, but it starts this year in a tense right angle with Jupiter, which peaked on the 24th of December. What this is saying is that whatever you're thinking about at the start of this year, you need to know why you're thinking about it. Understanding your deeper motivations and those of others is critical, particularly with Pluto and Mars in that very tense opposition as this year begins. But what I would say is the North Node, which is coming to the end of its journey through your sign and won't be back for another 17 years, that actually forges a stunning link to your ruler as this year begins. So if you have the confidence to really follow the instincts that your senses are priming up for you, if you have that confidence to follow those in a decisive way, it could turn out to be a very successful year for you. But as I mentioned, by the 3rd, Mars and Pluto reached the peak of that opposition. They last reached that peak on the 18th of November, but then they were in 2 different signs. Having Mars in your sign is very much about showcasing your charisma, your talent, your personality power. It could be that someone in your network is going to resist you, perhaps because of that square between Venus and Uranus. So there could be some shifts in terms of your future direction, particularly if you feel that you're not able to be quite yourself. The positive thing about the 3rd is that Mercury ends a post-retrograde shadow which began in the middle of December. So if there have been some tangles around contractual or travel or distribution issues, they can start to be resolved. But when it comes to relationships, with Venus moving to join up with Saturn and Neptune in your 12th house, also on the 3rd, and to be honest, meeting Saturn on the 19th of this month, if there is any kind of relationship, professional, personal, friendship, family tie, that has been a little strained, you're going to have to look at it in quite a deep way. That can be aided in a way by, on the 6th, Mars moving into Cancer, because that's about your sense of security, but it can make you protective and perhaps a little bit prickly, particularly whilst it remains in retrograde through to February the 24th. But on the 8th, Mercury moves out of the sign of Sagittarius and climbs to the top of your chart. If you are switching things around when it comes to your goals and ambitions, you may consider some retraining or repurposing old skills in a new and fresh way, because that open-mindedness is going to be important. In fact, there may be parts of your past experience that you can tap into once the true nodal axis shifts on the 11th. The North Node, the point of destiny, moves into Pisces, and the South moves into Virgo. But they're going to be impacted throughout the year by both Saturn and Neptune. So if you're someone who tends to be a little bit protective about looking at fears, anxieties, or reflecting on your past, you may find that one way or another, Saturn and Neptune will be asking you to do so this year. The 13th sees the full moon in Cancer. Balancing that classic work-life scenario could be challenging. If you're trying to make progress in a new job or career or your own business, the needs of people close to you may be to the fore, particularly with Mars so close to the full moon. That can be quite a turbulent mix, to be honest. So over the next couple of weeks, things can feel intense and unsettled, either at home or at work, because you don't feel very comfortable with the people that you're collaborating with. But on the 19th, the Sun moves into the sign of Aquarius, which is really good for you. Even if you have been working out who's with you and who's not with you, you're going to find by the 21st who truly is all in. In fact, even by the 29th, because Mercury is going to move into the sign of Aquarius on the 28th, and the new moon in Aquarius on the 29th is conjunct both Mercury and Pluto. If ever there was a time to reset your longer term plan, this is certainly it, particularly with Uranus, the modern ruler of Aquarius, going direct on the 30th. But I just would like to flag up to you that Mars, even though it is very tender, does give you the chance in Cancer to catch up on any do-it-yourself tasks, or if you're looking to get some contractors in to achieve things. And it does forge a very constructive link to Uranus in the last 2 weeks of this month. Again, being open-minded about your approach will really help you, but also your compassion can be emphasized, or there may be someone you're going to draw closer to towards the end of this month, and it could be a surprise person, but it may be someone that you already know, someone you're familiar with, or someone in your family, but this person can be very reassuring. So even if it does feel that there's lots of change at the start of this year, I think by the the end of the first month, you are going to be much clearer about what you want to do, what you need to do, but critically, how you're going to go about delivering that progress. Have a great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Taurus, to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to share some standout details particularly specific for you, then on screen your event chart right at the start of the month and of course the year. That provides some very important information to guide us. Then, as events unfold, I'm going to explore those frame by frame to give you a clear understanding of what January 2025 holds for you. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24 you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25 you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. So Taurus, on the screen now, you can see the event chart. As ever, we need to be mindful of the two luminaries, the sun and also the moon. Now they're very close together, the moon's separating from the sun, and it's because on the 30th of December there was a new moon in the sign of Capricorn, which shares your earth triplicity. And the implications of this is it's perhaps asking you to be open to not just change, but perhaps travel, but perhaps new experiences, but also perhaps learning new skills. But part of your innate nature is to stick with what you know, because your appreciation of continuity gives you a sense of security. Now Uranus has undoubtedly been challenging that since March 2019, and it does at the start of this year, but it can be in a positive way. But you can see your ruler Venus in the 10th house. That's in a square with Uranus too. So this could have an impact on certain relationships, and in fact if you are in a personal relationship that you feel hemmed in by, that you don't really feel that you can be a free spirit, you could think very seriously this month about what to do. But also as the month begins, Saturn, the planet of structure but also of boundaries in your 11th house, that's very much about your future hopes. And when it comes to finance, Jupiter, the planet of fortune, in its retrograde still, is squaring off with Saturn. So again, as you're thinking and computating in your mind what your options are, part of it could be about being realistic about resources, but that could in some ways contain another part of you that may want to break free. So that can create some conflict, some inner conflict within you. But also you can see that Pluto is right at the top of your chart. And we also have Mars right at the bottom of your chart. So if we're talking about angularity, those are definitely the two most important influences at the start of this month and year. So Pluto can make you ambitious, But Mars in your 4th house can make you prickly with people close to you if they don't buy into what you're trying to go for, or they try to resist it. Some power battles are possible. These can all crest up by the 3rd. Venus then moves from your 10th house into the 11th. The 11th can be about collaboration, and for sure Venus moving into this area is asking you to celebrate the things you have in common, even if there are some parts of certain associations which don't quite work for you. But also on the 3rd we have that direct opposition between Mars and Pluto. Is there a link? Are you feeling, in order to get what you need, whether it's around a relationship or money, that you may need to reset your aspirations, which is what the 11th house is about. Venus is going to connect on the 19th with Saturn. In fact, in week 3, they're side by side. If there is someone in your friendship circle, or there is a future hope that you have that isn't going to work out, you'll probably find out then. But also on the 3rd, Mercury ends a post-retrograde shadow. If you've been waiting for some news on an insurance payout, a legacy, an inheritance, perhaps some pension information, you should get that news then. But the 6th sees Mars invert back into your 3rd house. Now I actually think for you, despite the fact that he is continuing his retrograde through to the 24th of February, this can actually be very good for you, because I feel it can charge you up, give you a closer connection to the ideas that are exciting you. And whilst Mars does apply to the full moon, which occurs on the 13th, and that could see you having an intense discussion with someone who has different values or different world views, what Mars can do is give you more assertion about standing up for what's right for you. In fact, that freedom agenda is emphasised on the 8th with Mercury moving into your sister Earth sign of Capricorn. But we also have on the 11th perhaps the most important single day of the whole year, and that is the true north node inverting back into your 11th house. Hasn't been here for 17 years. If you think back to 18.5 years ago, that's when you were last connected to this energy, which is really like a draw towards what really works for you in the long term. And sometimes that means trusting our instincts rather than following or being led by the facts. So that's a really interesting development. But just to let you know that throughout this year, Saturn and Neptune are going to be impacting on a series of eclipses across the 2 signs of Pisces and Virgo, which for you is 5 in terms of the south node, 11 the north node. So how do you express yourself but link that to your long-term future? That's going to be a big part of this month's journey with Venus connecting to Saturn on the 19th, but also a big part of this year. Then we have that full moon. There could be a lot of tension if you are around someone who has a very different set of ideas or wants to enforce their opinion upon you, which you could resist. You may find yourself very, very restless. If you're not particularly satisfied with where you're living, that could give you, this full moon can give you the impulse to apply for a new rental, list your owned property and try and get that moved, because especially with the link to Uranus as well as the conjunction with Mars, you really are going to have so much excess energy, you need to invest it in something. One of the things you could do is get a little bit more active. If you set your New Year's resolutions, and getting fitter is part of what appeals to you, that 9th house energy at the start of the year can certainly give you the push to be a bit more vigorous, to get into the great outdoors in a much more profound way, and that full moon can give you an extra push in that regard. Now the 19th sees the Sun climb to the top of your chart, where of course we have Pluto now full time, and they come into an exact conjunction on the 21st. If you are having some kind of power battle, whether it's with someone that you're seeing who thinks they know best, or it is an employer or a line manager, or you work in a big corporation and you don't really feel seen or heard, the transformational energy of Pluto in the last 10 days of this month is very strong indeed. But the interesting thing is that Mars in Cancer links back to Uranus in your sign. So your desire for change, which is something you often resist, once more is emphasized. Also, Mars links back to Neptune in your the part of your chart to do with your long-term plan, but also your idealism. And again, you can feel yourself just more open to an alteration than perhaps is normally said to be the case with you, where your fixed nature means that continuity really makes your heart sing. Also, the moon is exalted in your sign, so that's the second best position after Cancer. That's why your home, your immediate environment, is often so important to you. But the 28th sees Mercury join up with the Sun and Pluto in Aquarius, 29th, a new moon in Aquarius, the 30th, the ruler, modern ruler of Aquarius, goes direct, ending a long backward journey. So of course Uranus in your sign. If you have felt that you've been treading water a little bit since the end of August, feeling edgy but not sure why, don't really know what to do with the nervous tension you've had, I think by the end of this month, whether you want to change a relationship, your lifestyle, your interests, where you live, or where you work, change seems to be calling out to you. And the more you resist it, Taurus, the more it can create tension, headaches, migraines, and see you a little bit stressed out. So part of the process this month is accepting that even if we'd all like to have that continuity is pulverizing your passion and you're losing your sense of identity, this month is really pushing you to step outside your comfort zone and demonstrate to people all the lessons that Pluto gave you since 2008 in the ninth house, and Uranus with you since 2019 full time, that you can alter things, you can approach things in a fresh way. And if you embrace that this month, some really incredibly exciting opportunities can start to flow for you. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Gemini, it's your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details, particularly relevant to your sign, but please stay with me. On screen, I'll share your event chart right at the start of the month and of course the year. That provides some telling information. Then as influences unfold, I'll go through those frame by frame to give you a clear understanding of what January 2025 holds in store. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. So Gemini, right at the start of this year, your ruler Mercury is in your sector of relating. pretty well opposite Jupiter in your sign. Jupiter is about opportunities, growth, can be about good fortune, but it is in retrograde. But both those planets can give you a sense of real positivity and possibility, but they are T-squared by the planet of resistance, Saturn, and that's in a worldly part of your scope. So if you're really setting your intentions for the new year and you set them high, they could be tested quite soon, because Jupiter and Saturn are within 3 degrees through the first 2 weeks of this new year. So that's a critical feature. You're also going to see Mercury, however, end its post-retrograde shadow on the 3rd of January. If there have been some cross wires around relationships since the end of November, misunderstandings, or you're waiting to hear from someone or waiting to hear back on a contract, you could get good news. Also, you're going to see Mercury, your ruler, move on the 8th into the part of your chart that's brilliant for business, long-term financial planning, getting under the surface of things and grappling with the details in a forensic way. Your finances do come into sharp relief on the 13th with a full moon, but as the month goes on, there's an expansive vibe that's starting to develop for you, not least that your ruler Mercury moves into your sister air sign of Aquarius on the 28th and crests into a glorious new moon with the Sun, but also Pluto on the 29th. If ever there was a chance to plot a new optimistic future, it's certainly primed up from that point. So Gemini, on the 3rd, that opposition between Mars and Pluto reaches a peak. A lot of tension, because if we think about it, Mars can be quite impulsive. So in the 3rd house, I'll say what I want to say. It's a bit like having Mars in Gemini. It can be very frank and very to the point. But having Pluto in the 9th house, that's more about power. There's going to be a lot of tension going around the heavens for everyone, to be honest. But also on the 3rd, Venus, the planet of relating, moves into the part of your chart which is to do with your work. And that can help the position of Saturn, particularly when they come into alliance in the 3rd week. For example, if you go for an interview and your diplomacy, Venus, matches your intent and seriousness about the role, Saturn, you could come across as a very compelling candidate. But unfortunately, it's one of those aspects that can have completely the opposite effect. So if you work with people you don't like very much, those relationships can really chill down as the month goes on. But also on the 3rd, Mercury does end that post-retrograde shadow, which is great news, and can see some clarity come out of a relationship which has stumbled. But on the 6th, Mars inverts back into the sign of Cancer. Mars in Cancer can be a bit prickly, defensive, a bit moody, a bit up and down, but very passionate about protectiveness. And for you, the sign of Cancer is the 2nd house. That's everyday money. It's also your self-worth. If someone's pushing back at you and not recognising your value, right through to the 18th of April, you're going to stand up for your rights strongly. Good for you. But it is retrograde still to the 24th of February. Just bear that in mind. But there is a murky link between Mercury, your ruler, and Neptune in the early part of this month. So although Venus does move into your sector of success, goals, ambition, worldly attraction, joining up with Saturn, Neptune's there too, and that clashes with Mercury at the start of this month. So fact can be stranger than fiction when these two are in a tense angle. So if you're trying to clarify things, you really need to make sure that you double down on that. So for example, if there has been a bit of a misunderstanding, despite Mercury coming out of the post-retrograde shadow, send a confirming email or a text message just to make sure the other person really knows where you're coming from. But on the 8th, Mercury moves into the sign of Capricorn. Now, Mercury likes being in Capricorn because Mercury's thinking faculties and analytical faculties and desire for precision through the sign of Virgo is amplified. So because Mercury is about business, the merchant, the marketeer, and Capricorn is very much about those topics too. And for you as the 8th house, this gives you an opportunity, particularly if you're determined to get to grips with your finances at the start of this year, and because of the Cancer full moon on the 13th and Mars applying to that, that's going to make you very passionate about getting what is rightly yours. So if you're in a relationship, say for example you work with someone and you haven't had a rise for a few years, other people in the office or the factory have, it's something you're really not going to be happy about. But Mercury can help you to ferret out the details and become much more informed of the finer parts of what you need to know and present your argument in a very shrewd and business-like way. So if you're trying to raise finance, start a business, perhaps setting up some personal protection in terms of your long-term future, so pension plans, insurances, wills, all this kind of stuff could be something you're thinking about, particularly through that very powerful full moon. But if you are dealing with someone who tends to be a bit unpredictable about their approach to finance, whether it is a personal partner or it is a friend or a family member, that can put you a little bit on edge. But the true nodal switch, the North Node to Pisces, House 10 for you, South to 4 on the 13th, right through to the end of July 2026. This really is asking you to work very hard this year on work-life balance. Because as the year goes on and the eclipses start to unfold across those two signs, despite the fact that Neptune and Saturn both go into Aries for a period, they actually do afflict virtually all those eclipses. So if you're not quite satisfied with your worldly connections or your home situation, or they're a bit out of kilter, one time after another there can be things that happen that prove to be somewhat testing, to be honest. Now on the 19th you really get a breath of air and the potential for release. If you are someone who loves skiing, for example, and you want to get away from it or to go and enjoy some snow, the sun moving into your 9th house of travel can certainly give you greater impetus to go for it. But equally, it can give you the desire just to bring greater variety to your life. Now, I don't need to tell a Gemini about the need for stimulation. I have a very Gemini type chart. My Mercury position and Sun both in house 3. And my Draconic chart, the Sun and Mercury both in Gemini in house 3. So I kind of get that need for constant data or news in order to keep me switched on. But that could be something that really calls out to you in the last 10 days of this month. And if you have been dealing with some deep and heavy stuff, that need to have a bit of escapism or to travel or to change things up is really going to be something that can be very positive for you. But the last 2 weeks also sees Mars in your 2nd house, remember, of everyday finance, forging a link to Uranus in your 12th house. When it comes to your financial situation, you could benefit from all skills, knowledge and experiences, but in some way repurpose in a fresh manner Uranus. And that could actually, doing something quite bold, could pay off for you very well indeed. But there's also a link between Mars and Neptune, suggesting your imagination can be good for your finance, as well as your past experiences and knowledge. But the 28th sees Mercury join up with the Sun in the 9th house. So that desire for travel, learn new skills, apply for a course is definitely amped up. We then have the new moon of the 29th in Aquarius, conjunct Mercury, but also critically Pluto. So across the 21st, the Sun and Pluto are exactly conjunct. A repetition of last year when Pluto moved on its birthday into Aquarius, but this time of course Pluto's there for the long term. So if there is something you want to publish, something you want to broadcast, through a blog or just going on TikTok, and if there's something you want to say to people that you feel is really important, the end of this month is going to be the time when you're turning up the volume. But also Uranus does go direct on the 30th, the co-ruler and the modern ruler of Aquarius, but that has been locked in reverse since the end of August for you, which may not have been great for your nervous system at times. So that can also create some release. But if you can do something completely different as January comes to a close, it's definitely going to be good for your soul. But I think that this is going to be a year when how you connect to the world at large is going to be the big story, and how it feels, the South Node energy and the eclipses in Virgo, that is going to feed into the narrative of how successful you can be. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Cancer to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to share some key details to look out for. Then on screen, your event chart right at the start of the month and of course the year. That provides important background information. As events unfold, I'll go through those frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what January 2025 holds in store. If you've yet to watch my deep dive for year 2025 for Cancer, please see the link below. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. Your sign is ruled by the moon, and as year 2024 came to a close, there was a rare black moon in your sector of relationships. As you go into this new month, relationships of all kinds, whether it is with colleagues, friends, a partner, even within your family, are particularly highlighted. Now, the good ones can get deeper and much more committed. But there is some turbulence at the start of this month because Mars, the planet of passion and assertion, is opposite Pluto, which peaks on the 3rd. If there are disagreements about money, or you're in a relationship which lacks a little bit of passion, I feel that once Venus moves on the 3rd, that can see you asking some searching questions. But on the 6th, Mars reverses back into your sign. So he continues in a retrograde, revisiting you. But now Mars aligns with the full moon in your sign on the 13th. And if you're unhappy in a relationship, the fact that Mars is in the mix can create volatility, but also Uranus is as well, very much the planet of freedom. And as we reach the latter parts of the month, where a lot of 8th house energy comes in, featuring Pluto too, in its conjunction with the Sun, but also the new moon of the 29th and Mercury, you're going to find yourself wanting to really get to the bottom of what's really going on in your situation. And if you don't feel heard, recognized, appreciated, seen as much as you would like, and you don't see much prospect of that changing, and yet you're prepared to be very committed, you may decide to leave. And part of the reason for that is that Venus will apply to Saturn in week 3. So those are the big issues of this month. At the very start of the month, and on screen now, you can see the two luminaries, the Sun and your ruler, the Moon, are in that 7th house. The Moon's moved on from the Sun because the black moon was on the 30th of December, but a new moon provides a backdrop for the following month. But do be aware of Uranus, the planet of surprises. It's in a great link to the moon at the start of this month, so do be open to the type of people that you can forge alliances to. Ironically, Venus, the planet of money, but also of romance, is in a very passionate part of your scope, but squaring Uranus. So if that passion isn't reciprocated, that can make you restless, particularly if a relationship is just too predictable. But that other area of contention could be money. You can see Mars in its retrograde exactly face to face with Pluto. Pluto in your 8th house of longer term and shared resources, but Mars in your immediate money sector. But Mars can be an impatient influence, of course. But what you do have at the start of this month is also a square between Saturn and Jupiter. Jupiter's about growth, but it's in a very psychological part of your chart, and Saturn, ironically, is in the 9th house, which is about growth, expansion, knowledge. So it may be that some of the things that you're thinking about or gaining insights around may be in some ways rather painful in order to process. But all of it is going to give you an opportunity to create a lot more understanding of your motivations and needs, but also those of others. And by the 3rd, as Venus moves into Pisces, she loves being here, she's exalted, and if you've got a desire to get away from it all and have a holiday, that can trigger the need to make it happen, but also it can be an opportunity to be more truth-seeking around relationships. If you do travel, however, immersing yourself in wherever you find yourself staying can be particularly enriching. The 3rd, however, sees Mercury, the planet of communication and precision, end its post-retrograde shadow. If you recall, at the end of November, Mercury went retrograde in an area which is very much to do with life's details and routines. If you have felt not so great in terms of your nervous energy, I feel that Mercury emerging from the post-retrograde shadow will help. And one of your virtuous hopes as you come into the new year could be to get more organised, and that will help. Mars, however, on the 6th is back in your sign through to the 18th of April, but it continues its retrograde through to the 24th of February. Mars retrogrades can create frustration, they can slow things down. But ironically for you, Mars is actually known as technically in full in the sign of Cancer. But ironically for you, I feel this will give you a greater desire to take a firmer grip on your life direction and perhaps get going with things that really inspire you. If you do need to reach out to others and share the ideas you have, Mercury moving into your opposite sign on the 8th through to the 28th is going to be very helpful to you, particularly if you are a business person. But on the 11th, the nodal axis switches. This is incredibly important. The North Node, the point of destiny, which is our kind of pull, the sort of pull towards a particular mode of being collectively, but for you, it's going to really see you wanting to continue to explore throughout the year. And exploring can be in terms of travel itself, but it can also be from the comfort of our own homes, particularly through the internet. So gaining new knowledge is going to be a big theme for you throughout this year. But on the 13th, the full moon in your sign always flags up the potential if you're not especially happy in relationships. But because Mars is so close to the moon, that's one of astrology's most volatile links, particularly because Mars is not happy in your sign in an overall sense, but they're both being impacted by Uranus, which can be very provocative and very restless. Uranus is about your future. If you do not see an authentic future with the company you work with, the friends that you have, or one in particular, or it's more about your love life, the next 2 weeks could see some change, particularly as Mars goes on to forge a trailblazing, barnstorming trine to Uranus at this part of the month. If ever you had the thrust to be more daring, it's going to be then. But on the 19th, the Sun dives deep, moving into your 8th house. Very psychological, can be to do with shared resources and finance, and of course links with Pluto, which in itself can be very much to do with things like financial planning, pensions, life policies, inheritances and legacies. And the Sun applies to Pluto across the 21st. Could be a big event around that time. Maybe you're going to get some professional advice on how to manage those parts of your affairs, which would be a smart thing to do. But if you've ever thought of working for yourself and you've had a seed of a business idea going around the back of your mind for some while, this could be a time when you actually do take some radical action to bring it to life. The 28th, as I mentioned before, sees Mercury play catch up with the Sun and Pluto, but they all coalesce around the new moon of the 29th. Now, 8th house new moons can be a time when we in some ways ascend to a new way of being, but it also can be a time when something comes to a close. And that close can often be very painful, particularly with Pluto in the mix, which is a very 8th house influence. And also Uranus, the modern ruler of Aquarius, goes direct at the end of the month. Generally, I think that's a good thing. Uranus retrograde, especially in Taurus, where it doesn't like to be, has been a very turbulent influence for sure. I feel for you. It's about having the confidence to go for the future you really want. We can all cling to things. We can all be caught up in what we possess, 8th house energy, the material world, or sometimes we can just let go and have faith that life is going to transform for us and regenerate in a phoenix life-like way, something fresh and exciting for us. In fact, Mars forges a stunning angle to Neptune towards the end of this month, really encouraging you to have the confidence to follow your instincts, even if it does mean, in some ways, taking some important decisions which may not, in terms of the balance sheet, seem the most logical thing to do. As the month comes to a close, therefore, there is change in the air. But if you're happily ensconced in any kind of relationship, business, personal or romantic, it could get deeper and a lot more committed. Have a great January, Cancer, a great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just briefly, if you've yet to watch your year 2025 forecast, please see the link beneath this video for more. I'm going to share with you some key strands to look out for this month, but then on screen your event chart right at the start of the month and of course the year. That helps us to understand the background energy which is going to permeate. But then as influences come in, I will go through those frame by frame and give you a really clear picture of what January 2025 holds in store for you. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. This year begins with a new moon energy, but it actually manifested right at the end of 2024. That black moon was giving you an opportunity to set your intentions around creating greater order and more efficient structures in your life. But the sixth house where it occurs can also be to do with work, as much as things like how much sleep we get, how much time we take exercising, what type of nutrients and food we're consuming. All of these finer details can be very much under the astral microscope. But there is another energy competing with that, which features Mars in your sign. Mars is a very passionate influence. In our own sign, it wants us to be more assertive, but it also wants us to demonstrate our individual talents. It's very much about our core ego, but it is opposed by Pluto right at the start of this month, which can be a mighty clash. If there is somebody who's resisting what you want to say and the attention you want to receive, this could cause a lot of palpable resentment between you. Mars is very much about what you want, but Pluto in Aquarius might be more about a collective vibe. So just be aware of that. Ironically, Mars inverts out of your sign and back into Cancer, where it is in its full on the 6th. And it's going to be there through to the 18th of April. But Mars in the 12th house can be a very powerful but subtle psychological trigger. Anything deep within you that is not fully reconciled, and it may be to do with things from your past, frustrations, unhappinesses, could really start to boil away. And when we get to the 13th and the full moon, also accentuating your 12th house, the psychological part of your situation is likely to be tender, but also ripe for some kind of reaction. And that's because Mars and the moon together can be a very volatile combination. But Uranus is also there as well. And Uranus for you continues, despite the fact that it's retrograde for most of this month, in the 10th house of how you connect to the wider world. And that may have been a choppy arena for you since March 2019, but it could have also been a time when you've raised your profile, particularly if you've had the confidence to follow your heart and your instincts and be totally true to who you really feel you are. Some of us, at some level, prefer to fit in and conform. Uranus has been pushing you not to do that. And in fact, in the last couple of weeks of this month, the link between Uranus and Mars suggests that an old talent or skill or experience of yours can come out in a new and fresh way and see you achieving greater recognition. But the latter part of this month, Leo, is all about relationships, which I will share with you shortly, and it can be very exciting indeed. So on the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we need to be mindful of your ruler, the sun. At this time of the year, it's always at 10 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, and often I feel that Leo people might be setting those New Year's resolutions with some virtuous health targets in mind, but the moon has moved on from the exact conjunction of the 30th and the black moon, the new moon. But look at the moon, it is linking well to Uranus. So if you are someone who's prepared to try fresh approaches, that could be applauded by some, but resisted by others. Who will it be resisted by? Well, it may be that some people that you have to connect with and where you do need to be diplomatic, Venus, they're the ones that struggle a little bit with this more radical part of your personality that may be coming or may be provoked to come to the fore. So there you can see Venus in the 7th house, ordinarily a lovely influence for keeping things on an even keel. That's in a very tense right angle with Uranus. If you're in a romantic relationship where your desire to do something different doesn't conform to a partner's desire to keep it more practical and perhaps more traditional, that may be a talking point between you. But you can see that Mars is just on your first house cusp. That can, on the face of it, give you an energy boost, but because of the retrograde, it does suggest that this blueprint, the opposition with Pluto, that for the whole of year 2025, you may encounter some powerful collisions of will, particularly if you're born right at the start of the sign of Leo. But it is an opportunity also to have the confidence to voice how you see things and be resistant to any challenges that may come your way. But if you're thinking financially, Saturn, which for the last couple of years has been in your sector of long-term resources, creating some resistance, that is challenging the planet of opportunity, Jupiter, which itself is in a retrograde as this year begins. So you can't be too idealistic, I think, as you go into this new year, but you are being asked to certainly have the confidence to go for what you want to do from this starter chart right at the start of the month. Now, on the 3rd, Venus, the planet of relating, but critically also of money, moves forward from Aquarius, which I've just shown you, and into the sign of Pisces, which is your 8th house. If you're lucky enough to have a really good relationship with someone, it could get much closer. Conversely, as Venus moves forward and by week 3 connects with Saturn, if there is a relationship where things are not quite so solid, there could be a test. But also on the 3rd, much more productively perhaps, Mercury ends its post-retrograde shadow. If you have been finding that your social world or your creative world have not quite been flowing as fast and as smoothly as you would like, Mercury coming out of the post-retrograde shadow can ease things. It's also in a lively opposition with Jupiter at the start of this month and year, so there's every chance that things can brighten for you, but that inversion of Mars on the 6th from your sign into your 12th house does require some care, to be honest. And right through to the 18th of April, you could feel rather sensitive, even vulnerable, if you feel that other people's view of you does not conform to your own view. So if you feel that people are being unfair, don't really understand you, or you're becoming more conscious of the people who don't really have your best interests at heart, it's because in traditional astrology, Mars in the 12th house is the part of a chart which is to do with what's known as secret enemies. Now these days our enemies are often on social media, but just be aware that there may be someone immediately around you who doesn't tell you how they feel, but may harbour some resentment, because the 12th house can be about secrets, but Mars clearly can be about ruthlessness, anger, and just bear that in mind and be watchful about who gets close to you. But on the 8th, Mercury moves out of the exuberant Sagittarius and into the business-like sign of Capricorn. If you do want to make some adjustments to any part of your strategy, the finer details that you attend to can actually be a real asset. Perhaps one of the year's most influential events occurs on the 11th. The true nodal axis switches to the north node to Pisces, the point of destiny, and the south to Virgo. Virgo energy for you is what you can see. It's an earth sign. It's about your values, it's about your self-worth, but it's also about your foundational aspects of life. But it can be about everyday money. The 8th house, where the point of destiny has moved to, is very much about what we share with others, but it's also where we can be most invested. And that's going to be a big theme for you over the next 18 months. It will bring opportunities, but if you're involved in any business situation which you're not clear about, there could be some tests ahead, and that may be borne out as soon as week 3 with Venus playing catch up and applying to Saturn, because Venus can be about money, particularly in the 8th house. So if you're looking to raise some capital, or you're working with an investor, or you've got a different view of the strategy within a business as your partner, or even your romantic spouse, then that could be a tense moment. But also on the 13th, that Cancer full moon, which I mentioned before. The full moon in Cancer, it's very emotional, of course, very sensitive. It's very much to do with nurture. But for you, the 12th house is your psychological, emotional and spiritual world competing with the harsh practicalities of the sign of Capricorn, where the moon is in its detriment. So this is one of the most challenging full moons of any year, but because Mars is parked up right by the moon, the potential for old stuff that maybe you thought that you dealt with to suddenly boil up and come out over the last 2 weeks of this month is very strong indeed. But it could also give you the opportunity to liberate yourself with Uranus in a sextile to the full moon. Liberate yourself from a work or professional situation which just isn't working for you. So if you find yourself deciding to break out and look for a new role, have the confidence to know that your people skills and charisma can really start to glow in the second half of this month, not least from the 19th. The Sun moves into your opposite sign of Aquarius. It applies to Pluto on the 21st, ironically Pluto's birthday. Pluto, as you know, is about transformation, but it's also about power. It can be about consequences and outcomes. If there has been a relationship that hasn't gone as you would like, of whatever kind, the outcome, the culminative point of that particular alliance will be shown at this time. But you know, completely converse can be true. You could actually buy in to a new connection that feels absolutely fantastic, and it may be deeply committed. With also Mars in your 12th house linking to Uranus in the last 2 weeks of this month, don't underestimate old memories, skills, experiences, even contacts. A rejigging of your existing knowledge in a fresh way, but using that historical talent, could actually work out really well for you. But by the 28th, Mercury moves to join up with the Sun and Pluto in your 7th house. I love Mercury in the 7th house, and Mercury loves being in Aquarius. It's exalted or rises here. It also rules the second decan. but most of all because Mercury in the 6th house can be quite brittle. It gets so caught up with details, it's hard for it to see the big picture. Whereas Mercury in the 7th is more like, okay, you have a different viewpoint to me, that's fine. We can agree to disagree, something that people find incredibly, it seems, difficult to do these days. But the new moon of the 29th is supercharged by both Mercury and Pluto. And if you're thinking Mercury, your willingness to transform, Pluto, and your desire of the Sun, and also your emotional connection to others are all aligned well, particularly with Uranus, the modern ruler of Aquarius, going direct on the 30th. Some kind of new and very delightful possibility can unfold over the following month. And it could be a collaboration that can take you all the way to the stars. But that does require you to feel that you are a respected and appreciated element, or should I say component, of the overall. Because if you don't feel that you are an important player, you could lose interest. So a partnership for you gives you an opportunity to express yourself, but you do need to feel heard and seen, otherwise it will lose its allure. But if you do feel that it's very much a collaboration where you can use your undoubted skills and talents and personality power, and other people can complement you in a non-competitive way, it could be very, very productive indeed. And of course the 7th house can be about romantic relationships. Is there going to be a new understanding that gets born from some of the challenges earlier in the month? If a relationship is really meant to stick around, absolutely. But it's also true that you could meet somebody new, but it doesn't have to just be in a romantic way. Just having that connection, the sharing of ideas, that simpatico, is something to really relish for sure. But just know as well, the 7th house, where that new moon occurs, is also about setting boundaries. Pluto could tempt you at the very start of this month, and particularly on the 3rd, when the opposition to Mars is exact, to almost over assert yourself. I really would try to resist that. Know that you have the power of Pluto to help you with your boundaries, but don't push too hard. There is also, at the very end of this month, from the 28th to the 31st, one of astrology's most fortunate influences of the Sun trining up with Jupiter. Jupiter is in a retrograde until just the 3rd of February. And therefore, the desire to build new alliances and connections and networks may have been a little bit blighted over the previous, by then, 4 months. But there's still the chance you can have that accord or reach a connection with someone that's really scintillating as January comes to a close. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Virgo to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to give you some key features to look out for, share your chart wheel at the start of the month, which provides a backdrop for all of January. As events and influences feed in, I'll go through them frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what to expect in January 2025. If you've yet to watch your deep dive video for the year ahead, please see that below too. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data. If you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. Now, your ruler is Mercury. It helps you to understand things in a very crisp and clear way, but you're always looking to gain some practical benefit from that thinking too. And since Mercury moved into Sagittarius but slammed on the celestial brakes at the end of November through to the middle of December, the chances are there has been some confusion, some tangles, uncertainty around very close relationship, family affairs, where you live, how you lived there and who with, or possibly if you've been waiting for the completion on a sale or a rental of a property. And on the 3rd of January, Mercury emerges from the whole process. So the post-retrograde shadow comes to an end. But also on the same day, a gorgeous transition as Venus moves into your sector of relationships. So if there has been something that's been a little bit difficult to get through, there's a real opportunity to get to a point of peace. But there is still a very challenging influence right at the start of this month and year, and that is Mars opposite Pluto. When it comes to the order of your life, the structure that's often very important to you, there could be a challenge that comes your way right at the start of the month because of Mars. Mars in your 12th house can tend to rake up stuff of a more psychological nature, which can interfere with the smooth running of that ordered world that you like. In fact, as this month goes on and towards the end of it, there could be a big shake-up in the works. And when I say works, it may even be around your employment situation. But usually at the start of each new year, the 5th house energy of the sun can give you a sense of enthusiasm. And it's no different this year because there was a new moon as 24 came to a close. And that black moon energy filters into the start of this year. So that's helpful too. But it's on the 6th when Mars inverts back into your sector of long-term plans, your connections with people in networks, friendships and socially. Now on the face of it, Mars is better there than in the 12th house. And it's going to be there through to the 18th of April. So if you are wanting to reorientate your future direction, Mars is going to give you the afterburners to achieve it. It is still in retrograde through to the 24th of February, so your plan may take a while to really shape up. But also on the 8th, Mercury, your ruler, moves into a much better location for you. You can find your sense of humour and fun and even mischief coming back to life at that juncture. But for us all, this year sees on the 11th the true nodal axis change. The North Node, the point of destiny, which is, if you like, our collective direction of travel, for you moves into your sector of relationships. But of course Saturn's been there the last couple of years and Neptune since 2012. Neptune may have enchanted or disappointed you in turn, or enchanted again, and Saturn may have brought some harsh realities. The nodal axis suggests, and the eclipse series throughout 25, that how you relate to people and how you understand your relationships is going to be a major theme. But on the 13th we have the full moon. A full moon which is very close to Mars. That could create some turbulence or some about turns about that future direction. But later in the month there is going to be that big emphasis on practicalities. It's an area of life that you are an absolute expert on, but maybe you have become a little too attached to one particular way of doing things. And the gorgeousness of your sign and your energy is that precision, but at times it stops you widening your lens and drawing back to see the other opportunities that can manifest for you. So I can't wait to share all of that with you, particularly that energy towards the end of January, when you could find yourself really starting to rethink quite a few fundamentals in your situation. Now on the screen now I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, the sun always in the 5th house. I mentioned about the moon applying to the sun on the 30th of December, the black moon. So you can see the moon's moved on, but the 5th house is great if you're wanting to do something that's more self-expressive this coming year. If you're someone who gets a great deal of satisfaction from hobby or home crafting, for example, linking with others and forging a social network could be particularly gratifying. But the moon has moved on and aligns to Uranus. So that suggests that around your social situation, you could be in the mood for a bit of a change. And because Mars, you can see there in 12, could be emphasizing people you're not sure you can trust, or some downright disloyalty, that could affect your emotional health and therefore your physical well-being. So if there are some politics in your situation washing around at the start of this month, that could be something that really can deplete you. That said, Saturn is in your 7th house, suggesting relationships do need to be worked at, and it is in a square with Jupiter. So whether it's a professional relationship with someone in a position of authority or a personal one, there may be areas that need to be worked at very diligently throughout 2025. But in terms of the deeper details, so as you burst into the year, the moon forges that charismatic link with Uranus, but Venus moving into your 7th house on the 3rd is one of astrology's sweetest transitions, because Venus in the 7th house reflects the Libran energy that Venus rules, so it's how we connect to people. And because of Mercury ending that post-retrograde shadow on the same day, if there has been a situation which has felt unsettled, difficult, there is a chance to reach an accord, to understand where each of you came from in a much clearer way. But if there is a much more fundamental disagreement, because also on the 3rd Mars is in direct conflict with Pluto, it could really be very stressful, to be honest. Mars in the 12th house can, because of Mars's potential for anger, to be honest, and the 12th house is to do with the subconscious, our deeper emotions, but sometimes the part of ourselves we don't want to look at. So it may be that someone's going to be very direct in pointing out some of your attitudes, and that could make you feel very wounded, very vulnerable, or very angry. But on the 6th, as I mentioned before, Mars inverts back in its retrograde, which continues to February the 24th, back into your 11th house. That's a much safer area for Mars to be, because Mars in the 11th house enables us to be individual, but also to collaborate. So it's a much stronger position. It's also going to be forging a very dynamic link to Uranus through the last 2 weeks of this month. So if you start to think more deeply about what you want from that long term, if you're open to doing something that's radically different to what you're doing now, the chances of bringing some new but very positive possibilities into your world are going to be heightened. If you're someone who wants to stick very much to what you know, that's going to be more challenging and could create a lot of extra energy that you don't quite know what to do with. But on the 8th, Mercury finally getting out of Sagittarius is something to really, really appreciate. If you've not seen someone for a while because of the festivities and family time or work, Mercury moving into the 5th house for you also can reignite your desire to mix and mingle. The 11th, that nodal axis that I told you about, so relationships have been very important over the last couple of years for you, but the node gives you a chance to get the cash out, the outcome. So whatever you've been putting in, you will receive your reward over the next year and a half. But the 13th, that full moon. So a Cancer full moon, obviously the moon rules the sign of Cancer, for you could give you a little bit of a choice. Maybe it is about moving out of a group of people that you've been spending time with or an interest you've got and reorientating towards something that's more important to you as an individual, the 5th house energy that comes from the sun. And Uranus is very provocative in saying, look, if you need to change something, have the confidence to do it. But then on the 19th, the sun moves into your 6th house. Now, 6th house energy has a great echo of the archetype of your sign. It's very much about virtue, it's about order, it's about the detail, precision, achieving things that give us a tangible outcome. It's about being potentially very conscientious, thoughtful, providing services, making sure that we have an understanding of our fitness regime, but also what we eat and drink. But because the sun applies to Pluto on the 21st, if there is anything around your welfare that's out of kilter, a revelation can occur at that time. But the revelation could come from you. You can start to see something in a new, deeper and more enlightened way. Pluto's about depth, but it's also about the things that can be hidden. But sometimes it's the things that we need to embrace, that Pluto's subtly and powerfully prompting us to engage with, that we may have been resisting. Also on the 28th, your ruler Mercury moves into the sign of Aquarius too, again accentuating that 6th house energy. But that also can give you the precision that's important to make some changes. But the new moon on the 29th sees quite the lineup: the sun, the moon, Mercury and Pluto all in a line. If there's something that radically needs to change, whether it's around your job, whether it's around your daily routines, whether it's a part of you that is too caught up with minutiae and that isn't seeing the bigger picture, that can all come sharply into focus. And if you have been resisting change or doing something radically different, the modern ruler of the sign of Aquarius, Uranus going direct on the 30th, is pushing and provoking you to get on the front foot. Don't resist the change, embrace it. And because Mars is linking to Uranus so powerfully in the second half of this month, things could start to go very, very quickly in some exciting new direction. But if you're determined to stick absolutely metronomically to what you know, the routines, the life structure, it could be potentially ask yourself this question out of some kind of fear, because having that familiarity is very comforting, but it's a bit like an old pair of slippers. They may be very comfortable routines, but eventually the slippers do get holes in and that lets a draft in. So what did once work may not be working quite efficiently as you'd like to believe. So it's a time towards the end of this month where you may need to reanalyze your situation in a very honest way. If you don't, you could find that other people are starting to analyze your situation and make quite cutting and pointed comments to you. So if this sounds quite challenging at times, I agree that having Mars opposite Pluto, Mars in the 12th, opposite Pluto in the 6th, that is one mighty walloping, tricky influence. But there's lots of good stuff for you this month. It's all about being open to freshening things up. And if you are some very positive developments can follow on from that. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Libra to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. If you've yet to check out your year 2025 deep dive forecast, please see that underneath this video. I'm going to share with you some standout details to look out for to begin with, then on screen the event chart right at the start of January. Always influential. As influences feed in, I'll go through them frame by frame and give you a clear picture of what to expect in this first month of the year. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24 you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25 you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that are played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. Now, your ruler is Venus, and Venus starts this year for you in your sister air sign of Aquarius, which can be very glamorous, playful, but it soon moves on the 3rd into the very practical 6th house. Now the 6th house is an area of your chart which has come under intense scrutiny over the last couple of years because of Saturn, and it may have seemed at times that things were quite heavy going, particularly around responsibilities and obligations. But Venus can be very charming, of course, but also very creative. And if you're wanting to reorder a part of your existence, perhaps your home for example, because of the Sun's 4th house energy at the start of this year, the combination of all that can be very positive. It's just that Venus's challenge to Uranus at the start of the year could make you feel quite restless around a romantic relationship which isn't quite working for you, or if you don't have one, the yearning to have one could be very strong. But you know, as we go into this new year, there is quite a colossal clash between Mars and also Pluto. Pluto is going to make you much more conscious of expressing the truest depth of who you are in the years to come. But Mars in the 11th house suggests that somebody around you, it could be a friend, maybe it's your own doubts about your future plan, maybe you don't feel that at the moment you are expressing enough about what makes you uniquely you, and you could find yourself a bit conflicted, or someone can be a bit challenging towards you. What I would say is that Mars is going to be inverting back into the sign of Cancer on the 6th. Through to the 18th of April, you will be very much focused with Mars's help on goals and ambitions, and you can have a significant breakthrough, and it could happen as soon as the last 2 weeks of this month. But the fact that Mars continues its retrograde through to the 24th of February suggests that not everything may go quite as quickly as you would like. So it is going to be important to factor in some patience. Now, on the 11th of the month, we do have the nodal axis switching, but the North Node, the point of destiny, our collective direction of travel for you, joins up with Venus, but also Saturn and Neptune in your 6th house. And it is going to be impacted by a series of eclipses this year. So if the part of your everyday existence isn't quite running quite as smoothly as it could, you could discover this year that some of the blockages to get things running as well as they might be to do with a disinclination towards order, or it could be because of some deeper psychological blockage. But because of the full moon on the 13th, that's really asking you to tune into your work and professional situation, but feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable, you might find yourself thinking, surprisingly perhaps, of making a change. But the change can be as good as a rest in the second half of this month. And I'm going to illustrate you in much more detail shortly just why from the 19th right through to the end of the month can be so very exciting for you. But on the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month and of course the year. On the 30th of December 2024, we had a new moon, a black moon in Capricorn, emphasizing that home emotional sector that Pluto has been giving you constant challenges but some opportunities since 2008. But the moon's moved on and you can see links with Uranus. Maybe that link with Uranus in your 8th house suggests that when it comes to the resources you might seek to make a home change, thinking outside of the box could be a smart approach. But you do have, along with Pluto, your ruler Venus in the gorgeous 5th house. So that's been a real asset to you over the winter holidays and the festivities. But you can see that's in a right angle with Uranus. If there is something that you're feeling that you want to invest in, or a person that you're really drawn to, there could be a lot of electricity and charisma and magnetism around this situation. But you know, the reverse can be true. You could actually have a need to free yourself from something where you feel a bit controlled or penned in. It just depends on your personal circumstances. What's also important at the start of this year is that Saturn starts it in your 6th house, but it is in a square with Jupiter in the 9th. I think the influence of this, even though the eclipses this year and the North Node, as well as the South, are going to encourage you to get a good balance between your emotional, psychological and spiritual well-being and your physical needs and practical organisation. One of the things that you're being really encouraged not to do with Saturn square to Jupiter is get caught up in being too much of a people pleaser, which can be an inherent part of your nature. So Jupiter in the 9th house can be about a need to be free. So because Saturn applies to it, there may be some responsibilities and obligations that you do need to get through. And at times in year 2025, you could feel a bit constrained by those obligations. But Mars in that 11th house, is that going to be that person that you've socialised with, but you're feeling in some ways it's not really psychologically in your corner as much as they may be? Or is it that inner conflict within you about what your future route should be? Because sometimes when you are unsure, you will sit on your hands and you will weigh things up very, very carefully. But if you don't take an action, that particular influence could create a lot of tension. That brings us to the 3rd of the month. Venus, your ruler, moves into that 6th house, joining that with Saturn and Neptune. The 3rd, Mercury ends its post-retrograde shadow. If you recall, from the end of November to the middle of December, there may have been some cross wires. You may have had some technological challenges. I've certainly had a few. And as ever with Mercury retrograde, often it's what we do, where we haven't been quite as precise as we might have been. But of course you can get things like, there was that story about not sending text messages between iPhones and Google phones because there was a security breach. Classic Mercury in Sagittarius retrograde, to be honest. So if you did have some glitches around technology, buying and selling, a trusted appliance going on the blink, blah de blah, it wouldn't be a surprise. But Mercury going or coming out of its post-retrograde shadow is something to really savour. However, on the 3rd also, Mars and Pluto reach an absolute high point in that tense opposition. Essentially, they're about power. If you're able to harness the creativity of Pluto and output it to a wider group of people, but still be very collegiate in your approach, very inclusive, you're handling the ego, if you like, of Pluto in the 5th with the connection and network of Mars, which can be very egotistical, in the 11th. But then again, it could be a group of people that feel that maybe you want things too much on your terms. Just be conscious of that. Either way, Mars does continue to invert, and by the 6th it's back in Cancer, and it's going to be there through to the 18th of April. Your role in life. Everyone has a different role. Some people are very focused on career, ambition, success, reaching for the stars. Other people's ambitions can be to do with hobbies, what they contribute locally or voluntarily. Could be within family life, looking after grandkids. Could be focusing on hobbies and interests. But whatever your goals and ambitions are, they can be furnace-like right through to the 18th of April, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the reward quite as quickly as you would like because of the retrograde through to the 24th of February. But in the second half of this month, as long as you can be very open in your approach, Mars's electric connection to Uranus, the planet of surprises, could see a sudden opportunity develop for you very, very fast. And try to go with it if so. But on the 8th, Mercury moves into Capricorn. And you start this year, of course, with the Sun in Capricorn and coming out of that new moon energy. If you have been tempted by the winter sales, it may be for some home furnishings or things that make you or give you a greater sense of comfort. But Mercury moving into the 4th house could, for those people who are thinking about their own enterprise, could see you thinking about using your home as your HQ. But the 11th sees that true nodal axis switch. The south is Virgo, the north is Pisces. So in a way it's flipped for you from what it is for say everyone else collectively. So far as Virgo is your 12th house, the more psychological dimension, and Pisces is the practical dimension. Now Pisces can be very compassionate, and you probably found since Neptune moved in 2012 into the sign of Pisces that you have shown a lot of compassion or used a lot of your inner emotional resources within your work. But Saturn's been asking you to push back a little bit over the last couple of years and set some boundaries, or you have ended up rather weary at times. So getting that sweet spot around your health is a big marker point from the 11th. The Cancer full moon, however, on the 13th, if you are very unhappy emotionally in a job you're in, you're really being pushed to take some action with Mars in the mix. And also show that you are a cardinal sign, and that means that you can be very outspoken when you need to be. Not necessarily in the first instance, you'd rather take soundings. You would prefer to reach an accord where everyone gets a bit of what they want. But if you feel really thwarted, you may put your foot hard to the floor and make it clear about what you will not accept anymore. However, from the 19th, a much more playful, sociable dimension starts to emerge. The 21st sees the Sun applied to Pluto. If it's important to you around children, if you have kids and what they do, their hobbies and interests give you a lot of personal satisfaction, you could find yourself really being engaged with their needs a lot more at this time. For some people, it could also be fated about adding to the family unit. But most of all, if you are wanting to just demonstrate to people just how talented you are, how much flair and creativity and artistry you have, that combination between the Sun and Pluto is asking you to drag it up from the depths of your being. Now on the 28th, Mercury moves out of the 4th house, where it can struggle a little bit with introspection and letting thoughts go round our mind in a circular way, to actually being much more playful, even mischievous. So you could find as the month comes to an end, and it is a complex month, that you're actually wanting to reinvigorate your social world, your connections to others. If there is somebody that you're spending time with romantically, with the new moon featuring not just the Sun, the moon and Pluto, but also Mercury, oh my, what a very effervescent collective that is. But it's certainly giving you a lot more confidence. And because Mars is accentuating your assertiveness in a very public way, if there are talents that can be filtered through that energy of Mars, you've got quite the mix. Now Uranus goes direct after having been retrograde for 5 months from the end of August. If you have found that your long-term financial situation has been extremely choppy and changeable, very unpredictable since March 2019, the fact that at least Uranus goes direct is very welcome. But I feel that you get a chance to showcase a much more outgoing part of your being, perhaps in the most visible and recognizable way for many years. Pluto has taken quite a toll, but Saturn has as well. Uranus has had a say in it also. So as you come to the end of January, whatever you've gone through or whatever you are experiencing, be assured that that coalescence of the Sun, Moon, Mercury and Pluto, because Mercury loves being in Aquarius, is really giving you a fantastic platform to just use your personality power and charisma to the absolute max in whatever way that you choose. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Scorpio, it's your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to give you some standout details to look out for to begin with, then on screen the event chart, which provides a backdrop for the whole of January. As influences feed in, I'll go through each of those frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what January 2025 holds in store. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that are played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, Draconic perspective, if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. Your two rulers of Mars and Pluto, Mars your traditional ruler, Pluto your modern ruler, are in conflict as we go into this new year. That reaches a peak on the 3rd. I will unpick that for you. But Mars is also in a retrograde, which means that it inverts into your sector of freedom, adventure and independence on the 6th, where it will be through to the 18th of April. That suggests some exciting developments in your life early in the new year. But there is a full moon on the 13th, which also has Mars, but Uranus, the planet of change, in the mix. If there is a situation that you feel really held back by, where you feel your freedom is compromised, that could be a telling time. But as the month goes on, the focus is going to move much more on where you live, how you live there, and who with. Anything to do with the inner workings of your life really comes sharply into focus. On the screen now, I'm sharing your event chart right at the start of the year. As usual, we need to look at the position of the two luminaries. The Sun, always in your 3rd house, suggests your mind can be active. The Moon is here too. The reason for this, Scorpio, is that on the 30th of December we had a black moon. Now that's separating, but that new moon energy really gives you potentially a desire for fresh engagement and interaction with people. But your two rulers, you can see that Mars is right at the top of your chart, suggesting, despite its retrograde, that throughout the next 12 months, but particularly in January, you may want to push yourself outside your comfort zone. It could be around your own personal situation, it could be professionally, but that may mean that that has some kind of impact on your home, security, or a very close relationship. But also you can see that Uranus is in your sector of relating still, as it has been since 2019, and that can be a very provoking influence. It can bring fresh people into your life, but it can also see you restless, particularly if a relationship has got a little stale. And you can see that Uranus does square off with Venus in your 4th house. So even if you are in a tie, any kind of relationship where perhaps it's a little too predictable, there may be part of you that wants to be provocative and perhaps try to gain some kind of reaction or spark if things have become rather too mundane. But Saturn, the planet which is very much to do with structure, time, but also limitations, begins this year still in your sector of self-expression, but also romance. And that is clashing with Jupiter. So whether it's Uranus's influence or it is Saturn's, if there is a chink in a relationship, it could be revealed as this month goes on. But on the 3rd, Venus, the planet of relating, moves into the sign of Pisces, joining up with Saturn and Neptune. That can give you a desire early in the year to engage in more social interaction. But if you have been trying to get your finances really more balanced, the Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius may have proved somewhat challenging. But that came to a close in mid-December, but the post-retrograde shadow ends also on the 3rd. But the 3rd is a really powerful day because your two rulers come into an exact conjunction on that day. And if there is some kind of power battle going on, whether it is within your family, whether it is with a partner, whether it is professionally, I think the most important thing to understand is that Mars in the 10th house at this stage can be about domination. It can be about authority. And it's important that you don't win a situation, at least on the face of it, but it also leaves some kind of lasting imprint which may affect the long-term harmony between you and someone you have to collaborate with. So if something frustrates you at the start of this month, I feel that Venus moving into your 5th house suggests you do use a degree of charm and decorum to try to defuse that tension. But on the 6th, Mars in its retrograde inverts back into your sister water sign of Cancer. Now, if you are wanting to break out, go somewhere for some snow or for some sun, that can be just the prompt you need to take the action to make it happen. But Mars is going to be retrograde through to the 24th of February and in your 9th house right through, as I mentioned before, to the 18th of April. So if you are feeling restless, one of the great ways to deal with this is actually to get more active. And I know a lot of people do set their intentions around New Year's resolutions, but many of us by the end of January have lost a little bit of interest. But Mars really can spur you on to keep going if there is something that you want to do that's more vigorous, that can build your stamina. But if you are wanting a freer lifestyle, that can feed into that narrative. Now, Mercury moves into your 3rd house on the 8th, which can see a speeding up of your thinking and also can help you to start to get some ideas that you had right at the start of the year moving in a practical way. But the 11th is perhaps one of the most important dates of the whole year. The nodal axis inverts the north, the point of destiny, into your 5th house. Expressing yourself is going to be a big theme this year, but you are going to have to work at it. The 13th sees that full moon in Cancer. Now, Cancer and a full moon is a very intense lunation, but because your traditional ruler Mars is in the mix, if you do feel limited or someone you feel is controlling your independence, it could create quite the response from you. And you may want at least some time out. You might want to do your own thing, but also you may want to do something in a much more sudden way, even if you're someone who can be quite aligned and quite invested for the longer term. This could be one of those moments that does happen in your life when big changes can come for you. On the 19th, however, the Sun moves into Aquarius. Now for you, that's your sleep point in the Sun's journey. So it's the time just to pause a little bit and make sure that you're feeling comfortable, secure and safe in your life journey. So quite the contrast to that more daring, provocative energy of that Cancer full moon. Perhaps part of the movement of the Sun into Aquarius and its connection, its application to your modern ruler Pluto on the 21st is because that full moon was so powerful. You just need to let all the fallout from it percolate through your system and perhaps even decompress from it. But on the 28th, Mercury plays catch up. If you have ever thought of operating a business from home or just getting your home space working a bit more efficiently, this is a great opportunity to do that. But we also have in week 3 Venus applying to Saturn. If there is someone that you really like that you've recently met, this could be an opportunity to get much closer in a more formal way. But the converse can be absolutely the case. It may be if you feel a relationship isn't working, whether it's a social tie, a friendship, or romantically, that is a really testing combination. But then on the 29th, we have the new moon. But what a new moon in Aquarius this is. If you have been thinking of moving homes or in some way improving the accommodation you're in, whether it is a practical upgrade, such as refitting parts of it, or it's something more decorative in terms of the colour scheme or furnishings, probably the January sales could call out to that, because Uranus also ends its retrograde. The higher octave ruler of Aquarius on the 30th, ironically. And we do have a tremendous link between the Sun and Jupiter as the month draws to a close. So there can be some fortune in the air. So if you are looking for some new accommodation, you may just snaffle exactly what you need. But remember, Pluto's about transformation. When it's so close to Mercury and the Moon, that's very potent indeed. It can impact on your thoughts around where you live and how you live there, but also how you feel about people that you're very close to, or about the sense of security and shelter that you have in your situation. If there is any challenge to that at the moment, this is a time when you need to dig deep and find the drive and energy of Pluto to go with the flow on the transformations that it's calling out for you. But there could be that window of opportunity that comes in some kind of unexpected way because of Jupiter's link to the Sun, and Jupiter's in the part of your chart to do with jobs, but also to do with life's practicalities. And that although it starts and ends this month in retrograde, some kind of rethinking around that could feed into creating that more that safe and secure space right at the heart of your existence. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Sagittarius to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details with you to begin with, but then on screen your event chart right at the start of the month, which provides a backdrop for the whole of January. As influences feed in, I'll go through them frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what January 2025 holds in store for you. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. We must be mindful of the role of your ruler, Jupiter. Jupiter begins this month in retrograde. It is going to go direct at the start of February, which will be something to look forwards to, but it is in your sector of relating. But it also clashed with Saturn on Christmas Eve. So as you come into this new year, the first 2 weeks see Saturn and Jupiter within 3 degrees of an exact 90-degree angle. So if there is a relationship that you'd like to go progressively, but somehow or another the physical circumstances or perhaps the needs of other players or people that are connected to the person that you're drawn to could have a telling impact. Then again, if you're not particularly happy in a relationship, it may be the time that you have to think carefully about that. And because Mars and Pluto are in an opposition as the new year begins, which peaks on the 3rd, this does give you a lot of potential to assert yourself, but it may be difficult to receive other people's viewpoints. But we are going to see Mars invert back into the sign of Cancer on the 6th. And Mars is going to be very influential this month, you know, because it then links with the full moon of the 13th, which can have a particular impact on your financial situation, which I will explore for you. But from the 19th, your month is really going to speed up. It's also going to become potentially very exciting. And yet with Venus applying to Saturn in week 3, Venus moves into that sector of feeling and emotion on the 3rd. That could be a time when the relationship that you've perhaps been working at does reach a telling juncture. But by the end of the month, the desire to interact and sparkle and connect to others is really turned up to max, with a stunning link between the Sun and your ruler Jupiter as the month comes to a close. So Sagittarius on the screen now is the event chart right at the start of the month. As I mentioned before, your ruler Jupiter is in a retrograde. But that could, because it's in your sector of relating, just be seeing you think very carefully about what you want, because it's squaring off with Saturn through the first 2 weeks of this new year and this month. You may therefore find yourself wanting to have a bit more space for you. But it doesn't mean to say that the relationship is terminal, although on the 3rd, Venus, the planet of relating, does move into a very tender area and will meet up with Saturn itself in week 3. And that could be the week when you're really making your mind up what to do, because right at the start of the year, you can see that Mars, the planet of passion, but also assertion, is in your 9th house, where it demands freedom. If anyone is trying to pin you in and it feels like you're losing any of your love of personal space, that could be quite challenging. But you know, that could be your instincts about a job as much as a personal relationship, or around your professional situation, because Uranus is in the 6th house of work. If things are just too dull, what you could crave for with Mars's opposition with Pluto is extra mental stimulation. And why not? You also have Venus at the start of the year in your 3rd house, which has been great for you over the festivities. But it wouldn't be a complete surprise if towards the end of the Christmas New Year week, you did have 1 or 2 discussions with someone who saw things in a completely different way to you. And yet, as we go into this new year, one of the things you could be considering carefully is your everyday resources. And the reason for this, Sagittarius, is because of the new moon, which occurred on the 30th of December. And you can see the moon is still in house 2, money, self-worth, values. It's just moved on, but it's linking to Uranus, suggesting to be as open-minded as possible, but that's rarely much of a problem for you. But if you're wanting to travel, you could be very impatient at the start of this year, but perhaps that's where the tension point between Saturn and Jupiter can play out. Maybe a partner is not quite as engaged with that idea as you might like. You can see that Venus is also clashing with Uranus. If you work somewhere, for example, where it always seems to be changing, and every time you try to lean in to understand what's required, it's changed again, that might be something that really can test you at the start of the month too. Maybe you're craving, with all these influences, a new beginning of some kind, but because Saturn is in your 4th house, there's a part of you that wants to be safety first. So a part of you wants to be very enterprising, break out, free yourself from limitations, and another part of you that's thinking about, well, look, what if that didn't work out? And that could leave you feeling a little conflicted. But on the 3rd, Venus moves into your 4th house. Venus loves being in Pisces. If you're hitting the cells, this is really encouraging you to think about home furnishings. But Venus in the 4th house is also a great opportunity to do some redecoration. Now, if you're down south and the weather's with you, you may be keen to get out the colour charts and see what you can do. If you're hunkering down, perhaps your focus is going to be on making things as snugly and cosy as possible. But whatever bargains you can grab, Venus will see you truly appreciate them. But also on the 3rd, Mercury ends a post-retrograde shadow. If you recall, Mercury went into retrograde late in November in your sign, and then ended that mid-December. But it's possible that an idea that's important to you hasn't quite gained the traction that you would like. That should ease with Mercury emerging from the post-retrograde shadow. But of course, we do have that Mars-Pluto opposition, and that peaks on the 3rd. If you did have that encounter with someone over the holidays who had a completely different worldview, that could still be playing out by the 3rd. Perhaps it shook you a little bit. Perhaps you were quite proud about how you stood up for what's important for you. But one of the things about Mars opposite Pluto is that pride can certainly be an issue, and particularly pride about principles. But the 3rd house Pluto position, which is going to become much more important towards the end of this month, is asking you to consider your everyday reality. That's the functional part of our situation in terms of who we have to speak to, who we meet every day, you know, people like neighbours, people at work. So having a battle of wills can have a downside. But if you're really encouraged to do something extremely daring, particularly around travel or higher education, international interaction, that is a really exciting opposition. The 6th, however, sees Mars invert back into Cancer. Now, Mars in Cancer is in 4. If we think Mars is about action, assertion, desire, can be about frustration. Cancer can be sensitive. Mars can be quite moody in Cancer. But for you, the 8th house is more about intimate gratification, but also a desire for an improvement in longer term or shared finances. If you are someone who has got a great idea, perhaps generated by that Mars-Pluto opposition, that idea can gain much greater energy as this month goes on, but you may need to fund it or find someone that you have to work with closely. Mars in the 8th house is where by nature we want to be all in, but if you're in a close relationship where, although on the face of it you're supposed to be deeply connected, but it's not quite connecting and meshing, Mars, because of its retrograde here, could give you food for thought, particularly in the last 2 weeks of this month when it forges a constructive link to Uranus, but that's in your 6th house of practicalities. If you're wanting, for example, to do better with the finance you've got, Uranus could encourage you to do something fresh and different, but that means you probably need to get some very good advice, because Uranus can be a very impetuous influence and it can see us do things very quickly, and of course Mars itself can be rather impatient, so it wouldn't be too quick to dive into a situation. That said, Mercury moving out of your sign and into Capricorn on the 8th can help you be very precise in terms of managing resources, but the 11th sees the true nodal axis shift, and the North Node, the point of destiny, moves into the feeling part of your chart. So Saturn's been asking some tough questions over the last couple of years, and to be honest, over the next 18 months the North Node can do some more, particularly because it's going to connect both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces throughout this year. So for example, if you do want to transform where you live, perhaps move altogether, have an addition to the family. It could be a telling time for you. The 13th, the full moon in the sign of Cancer, which of course is ruled by the moon. This can be very, very intense. Because on the other side of the heavens, the sun in Capricorn, along with Mercury, is asking you to be very businesslike about your finance, I feel there's a much more emotional dimension when it comes to who you're connected to. Now, because the 8th house, particularly with Mars in the mix, can be about sex, if there is a relationship that you're finding very hard to resist, then you could find, and it may be with someone you encounter in a very practical but surprising way, practical location but surprising way, you could find someone very, very alluring, and that could set up a real exciting encounter. But in a long-standing relationship, that square between Saturn and Jupiter is accented by Venus in week 3, and on the 19th Venus and Saturn come into an exact conjunction. Saturn gets a really bad press, to be honest. That could be a very good combination if you're about to sign for a property, if you've really done your research and all the finance works for you, because Saturn can bring results. It could be an opportunity to do some physical changes to your home that have some kind of decorative value. That can be a result. But because Venus can, particularly in the 4th house, be about tender emotions, the coolness of Saturn suggests that if something is really struggling to work, the full moon and Venus's combination with Saturn could see a relationship reach the end stage. However, on the 19th, life gets seriously exciting as the sun bursts into Aquarius, the sign of the collective, the sign of future hopes, and the sign of higher values. But it also links with Pluto on the 21st. You could have a very telling conversation in the last 10 days of this month. It could be that this is through the internet or through a text message, or your own thinking can develop a much greater depth and perception. Maybe you're just going to give yourself the space to digest some information, and doing so can help you to see the value in a very constructive way. That will get even better from the 28th, when Mercury darts into Aquarius, a sign it loves to be in, that it's exalted in, but also it rules the second decan. So essentially Mercury rises in Aquarius, so the speed of life can just go even more helter-skelter. And I think that side of you that does love excitement will really surf that brilliantly. But the 29th is the new moon. If you want to set your intentions about sharing ideas you've got, sparkling socially, if you want to learn more about people immediately around you, if there are connections in your local community, voluntary work you can do, if you do teach or train, this is a prime moment for you to reach more people. But it's also a time when we can absorb skills as well. But you could find yourself very restless, and it might be hard to sit still. Mind, with Uranus going direct on the 30th, that should ease that to some degree. But for the period through to the 7th of July, through to the 7th of November, it's still going to be a year where trying to get that essential pattern and routine and structure in place could be a little elusive. Now, I should say and repeat that your ruler Jupiter forges a stunning link to the sun as this month draws to a close, which suggests a very sparkly conversation, which could be very uplifting, but it could have a large dash of attraction threaded through it. But it might be in the business sphere, where just your love of sharing different ideas and perhaps technology can be something that you link with someone in a partnership, which could prove to be very beneficial for both sides. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to share some standout details with you to begin with, then on screen your event chart right at the start of January. That provides a backdrop for the whole month. Then as influences feed in, I'll go through those frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what January 2025 holds in store for you. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video, please see the link beneath this video. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24 you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25 you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that are played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. Now, as we go into the new year, Capricorn, you're surfing the back of a new moon in your sign. But it's not any old new moon, it's a black moon, which is super rare. It occurred on the 30th of December, and it's because there was another new moon on the 1st of the month in Sagittarius. But the new moon for you gives you an opportunity to enter this year really feeling very energized. The moon's asking you to think about things like your personal image, the ideas that you've been percolating that you'd like to put into action in January, and just as a sense of freshness. But also, as we go into this new year, Saturn, your ruler, is in a square with Jupiter, the planet of growth. Now, Saturn gets a little bit of a bad press, but it does have lots of qualities. But one of the things it is asking you to do, especially on the back of that new moon energy as you enter January, is make sure that everything that you plan is very well executed and doesn't see you try to do too much, because particularly in terms of your interactions with others, you don't want to overload yourself. But there's no doubt about it, the other big story at the start of this year is the clash between Mars and Pluto. And if you are thinking about your financial resources, or you're in a relationship where there is two of you in terms of consideration, whether it's romantically or a business partnership, or you work for a business where you don't feel rewarded and recognized as much as you could, it's going to be a big deal for you right at the start of this month. And Mars is then going to invert into your sector of relationships on the 6th, continuing its retrograde through to the 24th of February, but is going to occupy your 7th house through to the 18th of April. So relationships are going to be sharply in focus, as well as your need to assert what you want from that new moon as an individual. And that's not necessarily an easy mix to blend. Having said that, Mercury, the planet of business, does move into your sign on the 8th. If you have gone through a period of soul searching or have felt a little detached from others, this is going to bring you back into the moment. Also, your ability to communicate effectively with people may have felt a little bit stymied by Saturn in the last 2 years. The North Node comes along on the 11th to give you some support. But the full moon, which occurs on the 13th, is potentially challenging. And if there is a relationship which is a little tenuous, particularly with Venus connecting with your ruler on the 19th, there may need to be some serious conversations. But later in the month, if you're really wanting to get those everyday resources working efficiently, but also gain a deeper sense of self-worth and personal value, there's a fab chance to do that as January comes to a close. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month. And you can see the sun is always at 10 degrees at the start of the year. And the moon's moved on from the conjunction with the new moon, but it did forge in a very enterprising link with Uranus in your 5th house. 5th house is about romance, but it's also about how you express yourself. And it has asked you since March 2019 to be more daring, to break the mold. And that combination between the moon and Uranus looks really exciting to see in the new year. But what about Saturn? You can see Saturn's in your 3rd house still, but it is in a direct square with Jupiter. And this is why I think it's important that you do manage your time, but also your energy and your commitment to others very carefully. Because Jupiter's in a retrograde all this month, it actually forges a really enterprising link to the Sun later on in January, but right at the start of this month, if you do feel that you've almost got too much to do, that can in some ways crowd out that new moon energy which wants you to focus on what you want to do for you. However, within the mix, I think improving your finances may be part of your calculus. Having Venus in your 2nd house to start the year is excellent. It's just that it squares to Uranus, which could make you frivolous, particularly if there's someone on your radar that you're drawn to romantically, because Venus squaring Uranus could make you much more spontaneous, but it also could see you finding it rather difficult to resist those January sales. But seriously, Pluto is the big story for you, because this is the first year ever in your lifetime, or any of our lifetimes, that Pluto has started the year in the sign of Aquarius for over 200 years. And Pluto in Aquarius, the 2nd house, is about things like the foundational elements of your life. It is about what you stand for. It is about what you're attached to and identify with. It is those core values, but it is about the filthy lucre. And because it's opposite Mars, I feel that one of the things that will play out in 2025 for you is an incredible determination to improve your income. And your willpower to do it is going to be phenomenal. The problem with Mars opposite Pluto is that it is a very firm, assertive influence that can be very power orientated. So in any kind of alliance, it's important to try to make sure that the balance between the ins and outs between the parties involved is working. So whether it is professionally or personally, that's going to be one of the themes of the year ahead. But it could also make you incredibly amorous. So if you are wanting to bring some excitement into your love life, that's going to be really interesting. Which brings us to Venus. Venus moves into a chatty part of your chart on the 3rd, but also into the water sign of Pisces, where she thrives. Where Saturn has perhaps made you a little inhibited in terms of expressing your feelings, Venus here can loosen things up, take it all day long. Also Mercury, which has been really quite a sabotaging influence for you in the 12th house for 10 long weeks, finally emerges from the post-retrograde shadow on the 3rd. If you have done quite a lot of soul searching, particularly up until the time the sun went into Capricorn with the winter solstice, and perhaps have felt a little detached or isolated from others, that will start to ease. But Mars inverts back into Cancer for the second time on the 6th, and that's going to make you feisty about your boundaries through to the 18th of April. But that's not a bad thing. And also, if you are wanting to bring that romantic partner into your world, going to make you much more active in terms of pursuing your desire. But just be aware that Mars continues its retrograde. So if you rush anything, that could be self-sabotaging. But Mercury moving into your sign on the 8th is going to be very reassuring. If you have felt that you've been floating without structure, or you have felt let down or disappointed by certain people, perhaps you've even felt that someone's been disloyal, Mercury moving into your sign can help you to get a clearer perspective. As I mentioned before, the North Node, the point of destiny, moving on the 11th into the sign of Pisces, accenting Venus's arrival, another good news story. They help to move things. So whatever your energy or ideas are that you want to express, things can gain a greater fluidity. But the full moon on the 13th in your opposite sign suggests if there is an issue in a relationship, it could get very emotional. But do you know, the converse can be true. The fact that Mars is linking with the moon, which can be a volatile link, but also they're both linking back to Uranus, could actually give you the push and the prompt and the provocation in a way to actually step outside your comfort zone and take some steps to join some kind of hobby club, interest group, whatever it may be, so to find the spark to take that move forwards. But equally, if you are in a relationship which isn't working very well, I think there could be some quarrels. Mars on the 7th house likes to really be very firm. The 7th house is that sweet spot that we link to others. But on the 19th, it's all about the money. The 21st, as the sun applies to Pluto, it gets even more about the money. It's going to be important not to be obsessed about the money at this point. Pluto does create obsession, but if you want to transform something, for example, loosen up your cash flow by selling off things you don't use. So you revitalize your cash flow, rejuvenate Pluto by letting go of something that's a physical item that you no longer use, because the 2nd house can be, as I mentioned before, about attachment. But also it could be you becoming even more enterprising. Capricorns are usually very, very skilled at resources. But what is going on here is that Pluto can help you tap into the deepest part of your being, perhaps some unused emotional, spiritual, psychological, creative resources that you're not giving full power to. The sun will help. But the last 2 weeks of this month also sees an electric link between Mars in your 7th house and Uranus. You could encounter someone romantically or business-wise who's really challenging, but actually like a breath of fresh air. Perhaps because you can be very sensible, having someone who's more emotional but also exciting in the way they do things can be the perfect complement. So some kind of excitement definitely can play out. The 28th, however, sees Mercury make its way from your sign, where you've been coming up with some great ideas, move into Aquarius, could see you get some kind of return. The 29th, the new moon, a perfect time to set your intentions, to improve the foundation of your world, make it firmer, more stable, but also, most importantly, celebrate what you stand for. The 2nd house isn't just about money. It can also be about food, you know. If you are wanting to really stick to a diet, and that's part of your New Year's resolutions, this new moon could give you a tailwind which helps you to keep ploughing forwards, to stick with it, and to show the grit and determination to keep going. Now, Uranus is an erratic influence for us all, particularly in the rather stubborn sign of Taurus. because that creates resistance and therefore tension, but Uranus goes direct after a 5 months backward journey. If you have felt that creatively, socially, romantically, things have just been very slow, frustrating, irritating, energy can just flow through. Now, I told you before about the Sun's link to Jupiter at the very end of this month, one of astrology's most fortunate. Jupiter, it's undeniable, is in your 6th house, but although it starts this year in retrograde, its link to the Sun suggests that if you do something which shows a little bit of dare, but it's based on some solid mathematics, planning, research, you could have a big stroke of fortune as January comes to a close. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Aquarius to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details with you to begin with. Then on screen your event chart right at the start of the month and year. That provides a backdrop for the whole of January and is very influential. As influences feed in, I'll go through each of them frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what January 2025 holds in store for you. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive Aquarius forecast, please see that underneath this video. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24, you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25, you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. This is a month which sees one of the most influential Aquarius new moons ever. Does that sound a little bit excessive? Well, on the 29th of January, the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, but Pluto are all perfectly aligned. The rarity of that is beyond expression. It's not been for over 200 years that Pluto has started a year in your sign, but having that new moon and Mercury, which is exalted in your sign, it rises in Aquarius, it rules the second decan of Aquarius in the mix as well, really points towards a genuine, fresh, new start. But at the start of the month, there is a lot of planetary activity, which I'm going to unpick for you. But on the screen now, I'm showing your event chart. Now, the big takeout is, of course, your ruler Saturn, your traditional ruler. And that starts this month in the part of your situation to do with your values, your life foundations, your self-worth, but also your everyday money. And if those areas have taken somewhat of a buffeting over the last couple of years, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. And of course, Saturn was making its way through Aquarius for the previous 2.5 years. So the last few years in general, particularly with your modern ruler Uranus in your sector of home and emotion, may have been challenging to say the least. But Saturn begins this year in a square with Jupiter, the planet of opportunity. That actually came into an exact 90-degree square on Christmas Eve. But through the first 2 weeks of this month, if you are thinking about doing something speculative or different, and you're wanting to be a little bit more on the front foot, just be aware that Saturn can create those inevitable restraints. But also, as you come into this new month, it is on the back of a powerful Capricornian new moon, a black moon. And that energy is very much to do with the psychological sphere. But in your sector of relating, you can see that Mars is in a retrograde, but in an opposition with Pluto. So that's a very, very powerful collision of two very intense energies, the rulers of the sign of Scorpio. So Mars is urging you to be more assertive, and Pluto is telling you that there's going to be changes in your world, but it could create some conflict if you try or push things a little too hard. But also at the start of the month, Venus is in your sign. That certainly adds to your allure and star quality, but ironically, that clashes with your modern ruler of Uranus. So if you are wanting to go forwards around any creative or self-expressive strand, you just need to be aware that it could have an impact on your home or emotional life. But when it comes to communication, we do have that opposition between Mercury and Jupiter. And that can give you a sense that something very special is possible in this new year. They're both detrimented in their host signs. And of course, Jupiter is also retrograde. So if you are feeling very excited, I just feel it's important to understand as you come into January that it is a transitional month, but the real takeoff moment will be that new moon on the 29th. Now, as far as the influences are concerned, if money has been proven a little bit hard to come by, Venus moving into the sign of Pisces on the 3rd could give you a genuine green flag moment. It may be something that you've been working on behind the scenes for a long time can suddenly gain traction. Even if you don't immediately get good news, you could do so as the month goes on. It is true that as Venus applies to your traditional ruler Saturn on the 19th and in week 3 within 3 degrees, there could be an expense, but there's an expense that or an investment that could give you a return as long as you manage it shrewdly. But also on the 3rd, Mercury moves out of its post-retrograde shadow, and if you have found that your future plan has been laboured, particularly from the end of November to mid-December, or your connections to other people, especially in terms of your network, friendships, alliances, have in some ways been blunted, things can start to speed up. But the 3rd also sees that opposition between Mars and Pluto absolutely reach a peak. If you are dealing with someone who has a very different worldview to you, it could be a telling moment in the relationship. That said, Mars in its retrograde, which starts the year in, along with your modern ruler Uranus, Mars inverts back into your 6th house on the 6th through to the 18th of April. Now, Mars retrograde can be a frustrating influence because it slows things down, but what it's saying to you in a way is to make sure that you're working on building up your stamina, your inner resources, and trying to work on your life organisation, because if those areas are working well, that's going to give you an opportunity to seize those exciting possibilities as the month draws to a close. Now, as the month goes on, Mars actually forges a very dynamic link with Uranus. So if you are wanting to make some home changes, the motivation to achieve them, even though Mars is in retrograde through to the 24th of February, is certainly going to be heightened. But on the 8th, Mercury does move out of Sagittarius and into your 12th house. There could be an important discussion that goes on from then through to the 28th. Maybe it's going to be a confidential one. Maybe you're going to be doing some deep research behind the scenes. But Mercury in Capricorn is brilliant for business. So if you're doing any kind of any planning or trying to find out some information, the chances are you can do so in a very penetrating but also meaningful way. The 11th, a critical day. The North Node, the point of destiny, inverses into your second house. The first time for 17 years. This gives you an opportunity to think about how you can be pulled towards opportunities, but by listening to your instincts. Because we're going to have a series of eclipses going across the 2nd and the 8th houses of your situation, getting your resources working really efficiently is going to be a big theme in 2025. But on the 13th, there is a full moon in the sensitive sign of Cancer, which is very much about feelings, but for you it can be about the domestic sphere, and Mars is very close to the position of the moon. If you're in a situation, say you share your home with others, and there are people within your mini community who don't take much care and don't show much or don't give much input in terms of taking responsibility for chores, that could be something that really niggles you, to be honest. But because Uranus is applying to this event as well, there may be some fresh ways that you can apply to making your domestic world work that much more efficiently, but it may mean changing things up a little bit. Now, of course, the 6th house can also be about work. If you're not very happy in a job, I think it's going to be very obvious to you over the following 2 weeks. The 19th, however, is a monumental day. The sun returns to your sign. The sun moving into Aquarius is going to give you an uptick in drive, in a sense of energy, because as you come into this year, surfing the back of that black new moon, which occurred on the 30th of December, suggested there was a lot of psychological energy washing around. So the sun moving into Aquarius can bring you into the present and give you a greater sense of what you want to achieve as an individual. But he applies to Pluto on the 21st. This is huge. Ironically, the 21st of January is Pluto's birthday. It's also my birthday as well. And that event is going to supercharge you and give you a lot of resources to transform your world. It depends on what house your sun is in and what other angles it forges in your natal chart, but this can be a time to really find extra resources in order to transform your life in such a dynamic way. But on the 28th, we have Mercury join up with them. Mercury coming out of the 12th house will just bring to an end some inner worries or anxieties, or even a slight bit of lethargy that could be washing around. Brings you into the moment, and they all align in that amazing new moon of the 29th. Ironically, Uranus also ends its retrograde, which began at the end of August. So the frustrations and the disruption you may have experienced around home, family, or emotional issues can start to ease. Also, the Sun aligns with Jupiter over the last few days of this month, and you're really going to feel that your life is beginning to move forwards in such a fantastically exciting way. Your sense of purpose, your self-expression, your enthusiasm are all going to be turned up to max. essentially you're putting on the celestial afterburners as January 2025 comes to a close. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one. Welcome Pisces to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2025 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for to begin with. Please stay with me. Then on screen I'll share your event chart. This provides a backdrop for the whole of the month. Then as influences feed in, I'll share each of those frame by frame to give you a real clear picture of what January 2025 holds in store for you. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 Pisces deep dive forecast, please click on the link beneath this video. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, wishing you all the best for year 2025. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. Also, please like and share my videos too. If you'd like to order your year 2025 personal forecast based on your unique birth data, if you order in 24 you'll get the rest of the year free. In 25 you'll get a full 12 months from the time of the order. You'll also get my free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Chinese and Vedic forecast, as well as 30% off and your life roadmap report. Your life roadmap report is particularly influential because this helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. The forecast helps you to time your moves, because knowing when the planets are helping or perhaps resisting your efforts is a critical feature of working with astrology. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, a solar perspective if you don't know your time, draconic perspective if you'd like your soul perspective, please see the links below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below and you can read exactly what people have said. I don't edit these at all. As you come into the month, Jupiter, your ruling planet, your traditional ruler, is in retrograde, and it is in a square within 3 degrees to Saturn, stern Saturn, who's been with you for the last 2 years. If you are planning in terms of your future prospects to move and you want to get things going in the early part of this year, you may find that things don't go quite as fast as you would like. But you're also coming into this new year on the back of a very powerful black moon. But that was a new moon on the 30th of December 24. And that energy is very much about social interaction, your connections to people, your network, and that does bring some opportunities for sure. Also, just to say that Venus, the planet of attraction, who loves being in your sign, she's exalted, arrives in Pisces on the 3rd. That's really exciting too. But there is a very powerful inversion of Mars, the planet of desire, back into your sister water sign of Cancer, which occurs on the 6th. Now, to be honest, through to the 18th of April, if you're a creative, and often Pisces people are, this is going to give you an amazing celestial window of opportunity to express your talents with conviction. But of course, because Mars is in retrograde, because it inverts from Leo to Cancer, that can slow things down. But I think if we see the big picture, particularly that Mars forges a stunning link to Uranus in the last 2 weeks, and then links to your other ruler Neptune in the latter part of January, that is going to enable you to try some different approaches and be really dynamic. So on the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. You can see the sun is always at 10 degrees in Capricorn, and you can see the moon has separated because it's moved on from the conjunction, the new moon. But look at the angle between the moon and Uranus. So that is suggesting that you could find yourself, not just this month, but throughout the year, connecting to some new and interesting people. And that alone is really exciting. But we also need to be mindful of that square between Saturn and Jupiter. So you can see Jupiter in the 4th house is in retrograde. But Jupiter's about knowledge. The 4th house is about our emotion. Whilst Jupiter is in retrograde until the early part of February, you can still continue to gain a lot more insights into what makes you tick. Saturn's restraint and perhaps frustrating energy of the last couple of years has given you a much greater understanding of perhaps what's really important and essential in life and what isn't. However, Venus, the planet of relating, but also the planet of money, is in your 12th house as the year begins, and that can suggest that you have been thinking very carefully about certain alliances over the festive holidays, and maybe one has really disappointed you. And if you have felt let down, whether it's a friendship with a colleague or in a more personal or romantic context, you can see that Venus is in a square with Uranus. So there may be a revelation that comes into the open early in the new year, which does give you the desire to actually break free and leave something that isn't working. Now, that big clash at the start of this year is between Pluto and also of Mars. Mars starts this year in the 6th house, which could see you, despite its retrograde, setting yourself some New Year's resolutions that are very much to do with being virtuous about getting fitter. But I wouldn't make these too stringent. Pluto is going to be applying to your psychological world for a very long time. And that means that if you are feeling that you want to change some outer part of your situation, understanding the motive is really important. However, by the 3rd, Venus does join up in your sign. And if you have gone through a painful period of consideration around a relationship, or even that aforementioned separation, it helps you to move into the moment. But also what Venus can do, particularly if you're single, is give you the desire to think about your appearance and how you present yourself. If you are hitting the winter sales, the chances are you are going to want to refresh your wardrobe. But also your professional situation may have been blighted by niggles, misunderstandings and delays, particularly since the end of November through to mid-December. And that can start to resolve itself from the 3rd also, because Mercury emerges from its post-retrograde shadow. Mercury is very much to do with commerce, business, marketing, merchants, Mercury. So this is your chance to get things clearer, particularly if you are wanting to change your job. And I think that Mars inverting on the 6th back into Cancer will certainly give you a desire to be more creative. That said, on the 3rd, the opposition between Mars and Pluto becomes exact. If there is any politics around your situation and you feel that you're just always on the end of it, that aspect could really give you quite in a provoking way, to be honest, quite a push to not just settle, to do something that really works for you. So once Mars returns to Cancer, I feel for you, despite the retrograde, that's a really positive thing. Also, Mercury moving to your 11th house on the 8th suggests if you do need to reach out, connect, perhaps it's through trade organisations, perhaps it's through your interests or hobbies, perhaps it's get in contact with people you haven't had an opportunity to see over the holiday period, and just get your social world working that much more in a connected way. But the most important moment of the whole year for you personally occurs on the 11th of January. The true nodal axis, and in terms of the north node, the direction of travel, inverts to your sign for the first time in 17 years. This is known as the point of destiny, and it gives you an opportunity to get in touch with what really would make you happy in terms of expressing your individual talents. It really is very, very powerful indeed. And for the next year and a half can give you the chance to really reset in a much more individualistic way. Now on the 13th there's a full moon. If your social and romantic world is a bit out of kilter, so for example, if you're not seeing someone but you'd like to, but also your social world has perhaps been a bit stilted, definitely a chance to be much more proactive with Mars in a connection to the moon. So Mars can give you more urgency to make something happen. There is a part of many Pisces people who will in some ways find it a little bit more difficult to get that first movement going because of the floaty, more atmospheric part of your nature, but you can be very dynamic on that particular full moon. So if something isn't working for you socially or romantically, you're going to want to take action, and because Uranus is in the mix too, and as I mentioned before, links with Mars through the last 2 weeks of this month, it's a time for you to be more daring than ever before, and having the North Node with you will help you to be that much more self-assured. The 19th, however, sees the Sun move into Aquarius, applying to Pluto the 21st. Mercury joins them 28th. 29th, there is a new moon. You can't escape the fact that Pluto is now in your 12th house for the long term, through to 2043 initially, and then back into your sign, then back to Aquarius, and then back to you in 244. So this is your chance to really come to terms with some of those deeper, more psychological parts of your nature. If there are patterns that keep playing out for you that have proved painful and difficult, this new moon on the 29th gives you a chance to really reset. It may be that you can watch some videos on YouTube, get lots of pointers, possibly talk to someone, share how you feel, but most of all, release old pain and any patterns that have been inhibiting you and holding you back. There's a lot of electric energy coming in a positive way as the month comes to a close, because Uranus goes direct in your 3rd house. If your nervous system has felt frazzled since the end of August, it may be because of Uranus's retrograde. But also the Sun forges a brilliant link to Jupiter at the end of this month, and you could find yourself gaining new, deeper and much more profound insights into what you need in terms of your emotional world, but also the people that you can feel safe to open up with and feel secure and nurture your inner self. But if there are some wounds or hurts or fears that have been dominating somewhat, Pluto is really giving you the platform to engage with them, and that collection of energy around Pluto with the new moon and Mercury can really set you free if you embrace the opportunity. A great month, and do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this one.